Ready, aim, release! Anyone see my mammoth? Hello! Hello! It is a Monday. It is 7 o'clock in the UK, and that means only one thing. That everyone else is turning on their TV to watch the end of the local news and the weather. Or you're here to watch Tourney Grounds with us, which is probably an infinitely better choice if you're looking for the forecast of all A Song of Ice and Fire stuff. Ah, see what I did there? See, it was clever, right? Anyway, as per usual, my terrible, terrible time introducing this show is introduced by the not so terrible, not so sultry-looking man over there. It is Carlo. Carlo, the breaker of chains, the Kalasar leader of... I was going to say something beginning with K. I have nothing. And the man of many tournament wins. Carlo Many Cups, as we're now calling him.
Always nice to have another cup.
Mm-hmm.
I really did actually legit get a cup, like a massive cup.
Mm-hmm.
That's not me holding it close to the camera. Like, you know, like this is way bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
It's impressive.
What are you going to store in that one? I know you've got your Blood of Your Enemies in one of the ones from earlier on in the year. You've got... Yeah, you don't use one for, like, just pebbles that you find on beaches that you randomly scour. What's one this one going to be for?
Tears, mostly tears. My tears, other people's tears.
Just generic
website
tears.
Yeah. People telling me the website doesn't work. Tears. That's what I'll put in that one. I don't. It has to be that big. That's how much people make me cry.
Eventually, you might have enough DNA among all those tears to actually create something as well, and you'll be the new Qyburn. Which, to be honest, I mean, you are basically Qyburn, unlikable and kind of mad. So,
I prefer Tywin.
You think you're Tywin. Anyway, we're here. Right. So, as the title of today's episode suggests, we are going to be discussing Redcar and our experience there. Obviously, the pair of us were away there at the weekend. It's not the only event that ran. We're going to look at a couple of other things as well. Do a bit of a tournament review kind of segment, if you will, or discussion. Had a couple of questions as well, which we're going to go through as well. And then we're going to see where it kind of takes us. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Obviously, all of this
works this week.
Yeah, all of this is pending whether or not we have Carlo or Carlo's alternative, otherwise known as CarloBot. By the way, CarloBot has a much nicer personality than Carlo. Anyway, so
mostly because he doesn't talk.
This is the Simon censoring. This is what this is. Anyway, so yesterday we were at Redcar. Woke up at some I'm not 90% sure that this time exists on a Sunday morning, but something like 6 o'clock on Sunday morning. I didn't think Sundays had a 6 o'clock in the morning. No, not I have to say.
I didn't get up that early. Mickey nobly, for some reason, decided to get the train, even though I had said I would give him a lift. So
I won't lie, right? I chose to get the train because I hadn't done it. I hadn't got the train to Redcar from where I am before, and I was that's right. So it's something like I'm looking at thinking maybe I can just go over to Redcar for games days and things like that, and not feel like that's an actual trek or an effort to do. But yeah, it was a pain in the fucking arse.
They are close enough. Redcar is close enough to us that I really, really hope that we can play with them more often. But it's just far enough that it feels like it needs to be an event before people are able to go and play. Can't really just go for one game in the evening. I mean, could if we were desperate, but there's other places to play around the area. But it's hard to get people together. It's hard to get people arriving on the same day. Hard to grow a really consistent group, but they have a really good consistent group. Seeing the same guys a lot of times now. They've traveled. First time I ever met them actually was when they traveled over to just play in Liverpool. Met a good group of 5 of them then, but there is maybe 8 to even possibly 10 all told of them playing out of the gaming figures store in Redcar. Gaming figures itself is, honestly like one of the biggest UK stockists, which, considering that it's just a small store in a seaside town,
Yeah.
which is what Redcar is like a really odd place for such an active community to exist. But
Hmm.
it just shows that it's not. It's interesting, actually. It goes on from a little bit around, the whole discussion we're having about US, UK, lots of that kind of include, carried on the Discord quite a bit. People talking about like what the differences are and why the US has trouble. Uh, Redcar really isn't a very big place at all, and the area is hardly has hardly any kind of population density at all. But they've managed to achieve a really good, stable group of 10 players. Now, I'm not saying 10 players is mind blowing or anything like that. But it really shows that like it's not necessarily just population size and population density that gets you there. I think it's about kind of community leaders and drivers that kind of create this community that people want to be part of. So I think they do great there. Like I really enjoy getting to play against those guys.
Yeah, yeah. Redcar. I just wanted to point out, like, Redcar's not big at all. Uh, to put it in perspective, where I am, I live in Darlington, and Darlington by comparison is probably larger than Redcar in terms of population. You got Middlesbrough that is kind of between me and Redcar. That's not big, but it is a city, basically as close as you get to a city in the UK anyway, outside of the likes of Birmingham and London. Um, and then realistically, there's the odd towns, mining villages, and things like this between there and Durham, but there's basically nothing between there and Durham,
Yeah,
and this is not a high population. Okay, that's not far; it's only a half an hour drive, but there's not a huge number of people that live in this area, and certainly not that many gaming groups. Um, but yeah, no, I mean it was good. It was good. It was 16 people turned up in the end. Um,
hmm
uh, we had one guy had to pull out because of COVID, as is this overhanging thing. Um, if you live in the UK, they've been talking about COVID being a big issue. Obviously, some countries have gone back into lockdown. Um, issues there. So we'll see how that all plans out in the end, I guess, to see where that all kind of leads to. But yeah, so Redcar was great. It was great. I got to go to the gaming figure store for the first time. Gav in there, lovely bloke by the way. Gav.
hmm
His store isn't big. I'm not going to sit here and make his store sound amazing. It really isn't that large. He probably has, I want to
It is
say,
full though. It is
oh no,
full of stock.
so full.
Like
Um,
the place is just floor to wall of stock and like almost like storage in that
yeah,
like it's not like a store where they got a bit of stock out and it's all spread out and they're trying to like get you what I mean to peruse and I'm not saying it's like piled up or anything but like like stores that are set up like like a shop, shall we say. I mean, like gaming figures is really like a gamer's
store.
like haven or like, you know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah,
literally like it's just full of things that you want and they're all just like packed onto the shelves and everywhere you look there's something you're like, I'm quite interested in that game, or oh wow, or you're like, oh my god, look how much song stuff you have, like you got all this stuff that like people don't even can't get anywhere, like. And yeah, it's really awesome that they are, like I say, one of the bigger suppliers and players in terms of like UK A Song of Ice and Fire. He orders a lot of stuff and provides a lot of the retail online stuff to all around the UK. Loads of people buy from him
mhm.
because it's great short store to support, and he supports events, runs events, and that's what people want to do, and that's why people want to support his store.
Yeah, and he does really enjoy the game as well.
Mhm,
I have a feeling I'm right in saying this. Gavin does actually play, but he doesn't play that often.
mhm,
He does play other stuff as well as you'd expect. Um, but yeah, no, he's a lovely bloke, and the store is a fine space. But they've actually got space upstairs, which they'll be using, where they can have actual events and stuff. Where they got more space, more table room, the usual kind of things you'd expect. Um, yeah, I mean, we're just talking about Redcar at this moment, isn't it? Yeah, talk about your town. Welcome to Tourney Round, where we talk about random towns in the UK. Um, so, uh, I guess the most important thing, or the next thing to mention, is the event itself. If anyone is interested, I'll give these guys a shout out now, and I'll probably do it later on anyway. The whole event was streamed. 8.5 hours worth of streaming. There's bits obviously where there's not much going on between games, but 8.5 hours streaming of the top table. And because Carlo is an absolute troll, he ended up on table one for game one, and then won every game. So he just stayed on. So if you want to watch Targs beating different players and different lists, then watch the stream.
Yeah, if you want to watch me play Drogo for 8 hours straight, then there's nowhere better to look. Like, like an absolute masterclass in some really. I do think that actually it's probably a really, really good stream. I haven't had time to look back on it, but like there were a lot of close games. There was a lot of games where I really did think I was going to lose. Like, I mean, forget like how good, we can all say like, oh, that person was a brilliant player, that person's a brilliant player, whatever. Every one of my games, I felt quite pushed. Every game there was a point where I was like, oh my, I might not win this.
Mhm.
Which obviously, like normally my natural assumption is I'm going to win the game. And there's only a few games and a few moments where I'm like, oh my God, I might not win. And it happened to me a lot of times. Even my game against Dan, one of my regular opponents, who I would normally beat like every single week at the club. I'm not saying, he does beat me time to time, but like I would think that on a tournament day, like I'd be like, right, I'm definitely going to beat Dan. That was close. Pushed me much harder than he has for quite a while. So that was a really, really good, interesting game. And yeah, there was a lot of close ones. Really glad that I got to play Psycho Steve, who have played quite a few times in the past, and really brilliant games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was really good. You played Alan, right, to start off with, obviously, game on screen there. Targ Mirror, then you played Steve. No, then you played
Then I played Dan.
Dan in a start versus Targ, then Steve start versus Targ, and then myself, Free Folk Targ. Yeah, no, there was a lot to talk about there, and obviously the whole day was great. I got Brian, which was lovely. It's the first time I've played against Brian in the Free Folk Mirror. It's my first game. I always asked, how on earth do you manage to do all this stuff for games? How on earth do you do all these recaps and stuff? And I am surprised at how efficient he is at just taking photos and just like getting on with the game and just going boom, done, boom, done, boom, done. In that sense. But yeah, Free Folk Mirrors, man. Free Folk Mirrors. They're just truly sadness on Game of Thrones because you're like, how do we win this game? Now we sit on objectives. Brilliant. So yeah, that was the thing. Yeah, and then what did I play? I played against a guy from Leeds who'd come up for the event, Paul, who was a lovely bloke, Paul Whitehead, and played against his Lannisters, and he learned quite interestingly why Lannisters aren't very good at the moment. Knights of Castle Rock, and he self-admitted it. He said like the amount of control and things that Lannisters do at the moment just isn't good compared to other factions. It's just not there. But he sounded like he was enjoying it. So yeah. So yeah, I think he did. Yeah, he came like just on the mid-table there with Lannisters, 2 wins, 2 losses, which is respectable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing wrong with a 2-2. Nothing wrong with that at all. Then I played against Daryl, who I played prior in Dark Wings, Dark Words. And if Daryl is watching or watching this back, I will say, Daryl, when you play secret mission, objective, deck, game modes, whatever you want to call them, read the secret missions.
Mm.
People, and Daryl hates them, and I know a lot of other people have a lot against them. I don't know what you found, Carlo, in your game, but that was against would have been against Steve, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of backlash for secret missions still, because it adds. Someone was saying like adds complexity to the game. It adds an element of like extra bookkeeping, and I can
Hmm.
see to see some extent, the extra bookkeeping, which missions are in play, which ones aren't. Sometimes if you've got all four out at one time, you get confused about which pile's which and things like this. And it is a thing that you sometimes just forget to read and check up on. I can understand that. I quite like them. I don't know.
I had a brilliant game against Steve. It was actually one of my favorite games.
Mhm.
Probably my actual favorite game of the tournament, and it was Dark Winds, Dark Words. I mean, Steve played the missions really well. In that, I felt that I like took the game from him very early. He utilized the missions to just keep scoring points, keep the game close, keep himself in contention the entire way through.
Mhm.
And it was scoreline wise, it was by far my closest result. Um, the battle felt like I took it early, and I was never close to getting tabled, and like I was always sort of threatening to table him. But other results like against Dan, like I did actually table Dan, but Dan was an incredibly close game. It could easily have basically gone the other way, and I could have been tabled. I felt like at times, but the secret missions meant that a much more interesting dynamic. It was much less just like, hey, I'll go out here and win the fight and then I'll win the game.
Yeah.
Because Steve always had alternate routes to victory, and he always had other things he could do, and it gave a really interesting dynamic to his fully Brynden Tully Cav outrider list. A fully Cav based dark list, 100% Cav, has a lot of ways to score points. It has a lot more flexibility than like an infantry spam list, and I
Mhm.
think that's really important and interesting. That it also helps another dynamic to give value to certain types of lists. So yeah, I think that is brilliant. I do personally think that there should be secret missions utilized in tournaments. I like them, and I thought it was a brilliant game.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I like the dynamic they add, although they are annoying, and I get that certain people don't like to think about them, certain people don't like to play around them. But I agree. I like secret mission game modes.
Terra seems to say that they take too long. I actually think that Dark Winds, Dark Words definitely doesn't myself. I think Dark Winds, Dark Words is an incredibly fast scoring mode. You score for kills, you score for objectives
Mhm.
on the board, and you score for the objective missions. Like it's basically, in a way, it's like you're effectively playing like Dance with Dragons with
Combined with
extra scoring options on top,
yeah.
right? Or you're playing Clash, but it's not your commander that scores; it's like a variable thing that scores. I don't see how people can think that Dark Winds is a slow game mode. Personally, I really don't think it is. I think it's one of the fastest game modes. If you're playing it slow, it's because you've literally never read the mission cards before, and you're like taking too long to understand them.
Mhm.
And I guess, well, read the mission cards, guys.
Yeah. I
What
can.
Winds of Winter, I do have a slight like. Yes, I think the way that people like they need quite a high level of knowledge about the secret missions in Winds of Winter to play them quickly, because the whole segment where you draft the mission, the whole segment where you then play the mission at the start of each round, it effectively adds a whole like extra pre-phase to the game. It adds a pre-phase to every turn, well, every round. Pre-phase to the game, it adds a pre-phase to the round. So I see how that slows the game down. Plus, you've got these 5 objectives, but you don't actually score them in Winds of Winter. So yes, I agree that Winds of Winter can be quite a slow mode. But
There's
Dark Wings, Dark
also
Words, I think is absolutely tournament viable. I think it's as fast as anything else.
the big thing for me with Winds of Winter is the nature of how competitive the missions and the mission selection becomes in Winds of Winter. And what I mean by that is the subtleties of things like actually going up early in Winds of Winter can be the easiest way to lose the game, which
Hmm.
seems like really counterintuitive. But you don't necessarily want to go up early by scoring a mission and things like this, and it's yeah, it's difficult. It is difficult in terms of managing that with wins, and I do have a bit of a problem with wins. Um, and yeah, Aaron says there was only one game that went to time on Dark Wings, Dark Words. He believes, yeah. And I know my first game, so Game of Thrones, went to time for me. It's a free vote mirror. It's nearly always going to go to time. Um, but
It's
yeah.
quite interesting as like as a side discussion that
Mhm.
Tara's basically saying it's not so much that the game will go to time, but that if you're less experienced with the secret missions, then he feels like there's too much time pressure, shall we call it. He doesn't call it time pressure, but he basically says that players will make mistakes. Um, and it's an interesting concept. I'm not saying I'm right, but my viewpoint is that's part of knowing the game, right? Like that there has to be ways for one player to prove that they're better at the game, right? And if being better at the game is not making mistakes, we can make mistakes in any number of ways. I could not think about one of your tactics cards and fall into a trigger, and it could be absolutely game breaking for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, think that there are cards that I think about constantly as a very experienced player, and a less experienced player won't. I'm maybe constantly thinking about diversion tactics, like and I know the trigger of diversion tactics off by heart. I know that it's melee attack only, so I know that if I could take a ranged attack or a melee attack, well, I'm better off taking the ranged if I'm scared of what diversion tactics will do, and all these things. Now, I see people sometimes sit on TTS and they will literally take forever, and this is how we end up with these TTS games that possibly take 4 hours because they're literally like looking through other people's cards. They're like learning all these things as they go, and it's become this accepted thing that like people can take as long as they possibly want. And I think that there needs to be an element of time pressure. I think it's actually really becoming something of a larger discussion point, or like a larger part of my thinking. Like I am starting to wonder whether or not chess clocks are important. This is why I've been thinking about a lot recently, because I think that there is a huge value to putting people under time pressure. Because if you give people as long as they possibly want, say we could just play the game forever, and it was a really important game, then why wouldn't a person sit and think about every decision for a very, very long time? Like, let's just say there isn't a time limit on the game, but we were playing for like something important. We both
Ten grand.
desperately
Sorry, let's
wanted
make
this
it
thing.
10 grand. You win, you win ten
Yeah,
grand.
we could
Make
make
it.
it money, but we could make it like
Doesn't
the
matter.
biggest game. It's just the world championships. You don't win anything except the kudos of you will be the world champion. This game is literally going to take place over 10 hours. There's a whole day just to play this game. Every single decision we make, we are gonna sit and think about it for like 10 minutes, right?
Mhm.
But does that make one of us a better player than the other? Personally, I think that there's a huge value to like us actually having to make decisions quickly, and then we find out really who the better player is because we see who makes the least mistakes when under pressure. Um, but I think that it's a very fine line, and I don't think that the game or the community or anything's ready for chess clocks yet, or ever will be. That's a big question about whether or not the game has the right rule set to allow for chess clocks.
Mhm.
But I am big on the idea that when people are under pressure, that's when you find out whether or not their instincts are right, or whether or not, or how deeply they know the game, or more to the point that when that pressure is present, you will find out you create a new point at which people can differentiate themselves, right?
Yeah.
Um, when people have as much time as they possibly want, when they can do whatever they want, um, it takes a certain like aspect of ability out of the game, and you kind of reduce the number of ways that one person can be better than another. And so
Yeah.
we start to fall back on this idea of like, well, lists become even more important, and player skill becomes less important. Faction matchup, the list matchup becomes more and more important if you're not going to test the player's ability
Yeah.
in as many ways as possible. And what I think is great about Song is, well, Song of Ice and Fire stats is entirely set up to measure things about list ability, unit ability, faction ability. The game is still decided on the table by player ability. And I think that the more that you can push that side of the game and the less it can be about actual lists, the better, which is why balance is better. A place where somebody doesn't auto lose because of the matchup is the best possible place we can be.
Yeah. No, I'm in agreement there. I I do think chess clocks will add. My issue with chess clocks has never been what they add or versus why you would want them or anything like that. That was never really ever the issue with chess clocks. Um, but the bigger issue of chess clocks being what do they actually like, how the management of it in Song really works, and it is
Yeah,
difficult.
I think the management of the chess clock is the important part,
Yeah,
and the difficult part. Like,
yeah.
I think that's the thing that really has to be, you
Discussed,
know,
agreed, or whatever.
sorted, like solved. Problem that has to be solved before they can ever like have any kind of widespread adoption. And I think that's possibly an issue that never does get solved. But I think that is a very interesting idea, and I'm not against them in their entirety. That's just, by the way, is like I've basically never played a game under a chess clock. I'm not coming from another game system like say like War Machine or
Hmm.
that where it was more common. Um, or I've played some Blood Bowl, and okay, that's actually the interesting perspective, which is I think that Blood Bowl has to have the clock, right? Like it's so important
Yeah,
to the way you think about Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl is like, hey, come up with a plan and just do it like as fast as you can, because you're not just under like a reasonable chess clock, you're actually under like a ridiculous. When done properly, you have like 3 minutes to play an entire turn, right?
it's one.
Um,
Most Blood Bowl is only one. They only play 1 minute turns sometimes, and
I
that's
don't
literally it.
think
Yeah.
no, but no,
There's
okay,
three there's 3 minute, there's 1 minute as well, which they play,
okay. I
which is
think 1 minute
ridiculous.
must play differently because the 3 minutes includes dice rolling, it
Yeah,
includes
yeah, yeah,
interaction
yeah.
with both players, it includes everything. So I actually don't know how you could possibly achieve like the mechanical part of the game, which I think is an interesting discussion in that like lots of people's issues um, uh, like around what its implementation in Song is the mechanical issues around like I roll, you roll, I attack, you take a panic, you take armor saves, you take panic tests, like whose clock is the rolling, I say I start my turn and then I do things quickly because I'm under a clock and then you're suddenly like, oh, I wanna do a start turn trigger, like so effectively it's that back and forth part, but like, the ball has this single clock for the entire round. When it's up, your turn is done. Um, the game works differently, but there are aspects of back and forth in that 3 minutes. I do think that, like, yeah, the tournament community, as Lee Teddy says, maybe isn't it isn't ready for it or doesn't need it.
I don't think it is required myself for games. Um, the time pressure is there, and but yeah, it is a difficult one. Grant there with his comment about doesn't want to talk Blood Bowl with me. Yes, the last time I played against Grant again in Blood Bowl, my mummies absolutely smashed the face in of everything that he had on the pitch. I don't even think I won. I think I lost, but I killed everything, so it was fun. Anyway, I do. Oh God, I do love Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl's a stupid game. For what it's worth, I would never play Blood Bowl competitively. Not because of the chess clocks and things, but the game itself, right, and all the mechanics. But I never play it competitively. But I do see the value in the chess clocks and the decision making
Mhm.
tree that it creates. And if you actually watch professional Blood Bowl players, the way they manage their time is often the very first minute of their turn, they basically do nothing, or like a really
Yep.
super safe thing that they knew that they were going to do anyway, like just a basic like three
Like
square move
stand
or
up
something,
players. They
or
basically
stand
like
up
stand up
players.
their players,
Yeah,
their prones, that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, I think that Blood Bowl chess clock is part of what creates the game's identity. Like, even if you play at a casual level, I would say you should play with a chess clock in Blood Bowl. Like, whether you think the game's serious or not serious, it creates a frantic pace. And the idea is, yes, okay, if you're learning the game, like learning the rules, sure, you know what I mean? Like, take as long as you need, ask questions, do whatever. But like, if you're anywhere close to understanding how the game plays, you should start with a chess clock and then bring the time down. Like, start with a really generous amount of time. Just the actual concept that you're under pressure and you've got to make a snap decision is so interwoven into the way that Blood Bowl plays, because you could sit and calculate like your best routes for ages if you wanted. And I do think that there's an element of that with Song. It's not quite the same element. I think that the best play is much more obvious, or at least is to me as a very experienced player. It's not about calculating which one's the best or calculating like my chances that it might succeed. There is a huge value though to taking forever with your positioning, right? Like really like looking at something and then measuring your arcs and then like looking again and then measuring your distances between units and then measuring again and twisting. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can spend forever on movement and it can always be better. I think that if you can pressure people into taking like a gut feel and then making them stick to it, wherever they've said, like, right, my turn's done, and then don't allow them to be like, oh, no, wait, no, I didn't. I meant, I wanted to be able to see this unit, right? Or something like that. Like, if you're done, you're done. That's really important.
There's
And
also
then,
on that topic though, like when you're done, you're done. Like the going back to Song, um, the the interesting thing that I was thinking about myself was actually games against yourself, Carlo, and the games where I typically tend to win are the games where I don't actually sit at the table and actually game against you, if you know what I mean. If I
mhm.
detach myself from the game and just play what I think are good moves, I typically tend to win. But it's when I sit down and have to do the long analysis and the hard thinking, where it's like, well, hang on, you can actually catch yourself into a position where you overthink a particular problem. I think that is very common in Song as well, especially when you're doing all these kind of umming and ah decisions. It's just like, just do what you thought was right at the time, because if you were actually a good player, that was probably right. Like, because the big issue when we talk about comfort zones and things at the like competitive level as well is, how you play. I was talking to Aaron about this at the event, and it's like, because he asked us a question, right, about whether we wanted something recorded, and if we cared about them chatting about the games in the background and
Mhm, mhm.
recording, and the impact that had if we'd miss anything. And I said something that sounded really bad when I first said it, but it isn't. And it's I'll be honest, most of the time, if someone's watching a game and commentating on a game and things like that, I don't care what they say, and specifically, I am not interested in any lines of play that they come up with. Not because they're not good; they could actually be better than my line, but I don't care about their line because it's not a line that I'm thinking about and that I'm seeing, that I'm looking to play out in terms of my overall strategy or game plan. Um, does that mean that in each individual moment I could be making better plays? Yes. But the problem is, if you don't understand the impact of that better play, then there's very little benefit in making it, right? And this is when you teach people the game and when you teach people like how to get better and things like that. It's like, yes, there's a better play, but just because there is one doesn't mean that you understand the impact of that. So it's taking it to step beyond and go, right, okay, but why is this a better play? What purpose does this have in the grand scheme of things? Um, and sometimes it's not about grand scheme of things. It's actually right now on the board, this is objectively just the best thing I can do. Um, and there's a good trade-off there. And movement and things going back to it is an interesting one there. And time pressure, going back to it, makes those snap decisions are much more interesting,
Yeah.
because you cannot just sit here and think about the possible repercussions of everything going on, like you were saying. Um,
Yeah, I find that players who take an incredibly long time generally, I feel what they have is they have an idea that they want to do, they have a turn that they want to play, and then what they do is they start thinking about every possible thing that might go wrong, start thinking about every single possible trigger that might happen, and then they get caught in this moment where they're just like, oh my god, like they're so paralyzed by all the things that could go wrong in their turn. But there was nothing wrong with their original play. Like, and they should just make it. Like, yes, there are times that you overlook something, and like it really does, it can absolutely fuck you over. Like, if you didn't think about a certain card, it can be game changing. But for most, like, part of the skill, I think, is understanding for the faction or the commander or whatever you're playing against. Just keeping in your mind, like, there are just like 2, 3 key, like one or two actually, mostly. Like, really, by the time we get into three, it's not that important. There are just one or two important pieces of like trigger or rules or something that you need to keep in your mind, right? Like, I'm just thinking about Watcher on the wall, right? Like, I'm just thinking, will Watcher completely destroy me? Or do you know what I mean? Like, say I was playing Brendan, I was just like, what will Sentinel do? Right? Like, Sentinel is important. I need to know what Sentinel. All I'm thinking about the entire game, I'm just like, and this, does Sentinel matter? No. Cool. Go ahead. That was my gut feel. It still works. Sentinel isn't going to screw me over. Let's go on with it. If I think Sentinel and this card and Winter is Coming and Devastating Impact, I'm like, oh my god, like, you're just going to get into like you're just creating the perfect hand that your opponent could possibly have to exploit you, and you'll become paralyzed by what they might have.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I think when, or at least that, the times when I've been incredibly slow, it's because I've managed to get myself paralyzed by this idea of what might happen. Whereas nearly always my first instinct was right. Just go with your gut feel. Very rarely is the second, third, and fourth thing that I thought about the thing that I go with, or even the thing that would have been the better choice.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's little, and it ends up being like little things that if you end up in the cycle of thinking, it's actually a little thing that you end up missing in the execution of the plan that you end up implementing in the end anyway. Because you've been so many like, and Carlo explained this to me very well one time, but you end up thinking about shit that just doesn't matter. And the moment you start thinking about shit that just doesn't matter, is the moment you're probably just going to lose the game. Because it's just not helpful. And yeah, I mean, in our game, Carlo, there's an absolutely fucking perfect moment in our game where that happens, and it's really telling. Um, and the moment is it's really dumb. I won't go into what it is now, but like I look back at it earlier today. I thought about it as well today as well, and I was thinking, yeah, no, that
I don't know
thing
when
that
it
I
was.
did. Hmm?
I don't know when it was.
I know what it was. It was the set. It was the feeding the veterans in the way that I did.
Right. Yeah.
Specifically, the placement of my trappers was I was about an inch out from Sentinel, and then it moves up Harmer, and I can make the exact play that I opened round 3 with, but I can do it all on round 2,
Okay.
which is a completely different kettle of fish. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, no, chess clocks not required. Probably too difficult to manage. But I do think it's something that I personally believe it's something that should be contemplated. There's probably ways you can do it. There's probably ways you can do it. But I think it goes back to actually.
I think that is very. I do actually personally think, without having done it, I think that there are relatively clear implementations of chess clocks. I think that they're not that difficult to use.
I
The
do
question is
think.
whether or not you're too distracting to the players because of the requirement to press the button, right? That you need to think about it, but effectively you have to become used to using a chess clock. You have to be used to, um, like, it just, as you make a decision, you click the clock, right? Like, as you end your turn, you click the clock. And so I do think that there are pretty clear, easy lines. People are like, oh, what about XYZ trigger or something like that? It's basically just like, I play my turn, I say, okay, I'm going to activate, and then you say, well, I want to do a start turn trigger. And if, I'm like, okay, play the card. You either put it on the table right away, or if you ever say, oh, wait a second, I'm just button, right? You say, oh, just wait, like, I might Well, I'm like, okay, your turn then. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's all it takes. Like, if you want to think about if you want to play counterplot, cool. Well, I'm just going to press the button. It's not my problem anymore. You want to think. You want to think at the start of the round about whether or not you're going to play a start of the round trigger for like 2 minutes or something. Well, I'm going to press the clock. You know.
Yeah.
And then also, like, as long as people are aware of it, there are also times where like it's like, you know, it's your turn, right? Like, as in, sometimes I think that people. I've actually had situations with people where I'm like, I'm waiting for you to do something. And they're like, what? I'm waiting for you to do something. I'm like, I was about to play a card and you said, wait. So I literally sat and waited. Do you know what I mean? And I'll sit and personally, when someone says wait to me, I'll just say, okay, and I'll just wait. And like, I'm not going to do anything until you tell me to not wait anymore. And for some people, they're like so confused by that. Like, like it's my turn. I'm like, I'm gonna. Do you want to? Do you want to do something? And they're like, oh, wait a second. And they like look at their hand, and then I'll just sit and wait. And I'm like, but I don't know what you're thinking about. I don't know what you need help with. I'm not the kind of player who's like, oh, are you thinking about X, Y, Z? Or I mean, I don't discuss with people what they're doing. Some people like to like. I know Mickey does it all the time, and I actually really I find it quite annoying when he does it to other people, not just to myself. He proposes what thinks that the other person is thinking about. He's like, "Oh, are you thinking about playing so and so?" And but like that, I never do. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if somebody says they're gonna do something, I'm like, okay, that's just I'll just stay silent. I don't. Me talking to you isn't going to make the decision any quicker. In fact, it's going to make it slower. So yeah, like I think that the chess clock makes that super super clear. Like I click the clock, I'm like, okay, we're on your time. Go for as long as you want. But I do think that there are a lot of opportunities for missing the clock click. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of like you say, okay, wait, I click it over to you, and then we play the entire rest of my turn on under your clock, particularly if one person's experienced with it and the other person's not. So I think the
Not there.
community's not there yet.
I'll tell you an experience you wouldn't have seen this in the game I had against Daryl, and this is where the problem lies with Song a little bit more so than perhaps other games. Um, it's it's Daryl's turn. It's Daryl's turn. No, it's my turn. I make an attack into R'hllor Faithful. The R'hllor Faithful die. That triggers R'hllor Lightbringers. Or no, I think it's like the Lightbringers shoot into me.
Mhm.
And that triggers a panic test on the Faithful, which they fail, and that kills them. That failed panic test then triggers the Lightbringers to shoot me again, but I use Sentinel on the initial shot, but the destruction of the R'hllor Lightbringer, the Faithful is first, meaning that the Lightbringers get a second shot before Sentinel resolves, and then, still on Daryl's turn, I charge him with Sentinel, I resolve my attack, and all of that happens within one turn, if you will, under Daryl's
Yeah,
situation. And that's including then spread panics from the R'hllor Faithful onto my units and decisions about where they go. That was one turn, and I think between
yeah,
the panic fails and things being spread around and everything, 3 units got killed,
yeah,
and one of them got half killed because his Lightbringers lost half their ranks. I lost 2 units, and his Faithful died. Um, it was a complete fucking mess.
yeah,
um,
yeah. And I do think that yeah, and,
that
and and
is
those
where,
situations feel like they can be difficult to navigate. But I
yeah,
just think that
I agree.
whoever's currently like
Active,
moving active.
yeah,
Yeah, whoever's active, like both players can't be active in this game at the same time,
no,
right? Like you can't both be active. So you can be thinking and you should always be thinking so that when it comes to your active turn, that's not when you begin your thought process. Like you should be thinking while it's your opponent's active time. As they're maneuvering, you're thinking, oh, can I exploit that? Oh, which way is he gonna face? And then like once he finishes, and you're like, are you done? Now's the point where you're like, yes, I can exploit, or no, I can't exploit, or that's gonna. You should already be thinking like as they face certain ways, whether or not they activate X, Y, Z. I'm going to activate another thing in return. But but yeah, there are a lot of like unknowns in that. You can't always just be like ready to play because you don't know exactly what they're going to do. You haven't thought like, especially if they catch you off guard with something.
But
But yeah, I do think I think that a clock will manage that whole situation fine, and
yeah,
it'll add. Add I don't think it'll detract from any of that game, or that big turn.
yeah, no, I agree. And talk about like an example of a time where it's a decision, but like it's when you learn a matchup, when you learn certain things at like the higher levels, and there's a whole counter and counter to this. But even something things, one of the things that kind of happened in our game on Friday, was learning. Right, well, hang on, my opponent has a trigger at this, and I have a counter trigger to the same timing. But I'm not going to use my timing on my trigger unless he uses his trigger because of the way that they resolve. So something simple like Jorah using his scout openings order.
Mhm.
If you're playing, we play the Drogo versus Mance list a lot. Mance straight away, it's like, well, hang on, I've got predictable maneuvers in hand. I know you're going to do something with either an assault orders play from an NCU you've got available, or you're going to do something with, say, Vets or Drogo, typically. I can predictable maneuvers. I can target the unit where I think that that's going to be most applicable. Usually it's only one choice.
Mhm.
And it immediately goes, well, hang on, I've used a resource, you've used a resource. In the now, the thinkings go back to you. If you don't do it, I'm not going to play it. If you do it, I snap play it. Like it's that kind of thing is very important. But that's again something you only experience once you know a matchup very well, and the card triggers.
Yeah,
Ultimately, the
yeah.
card triggers.
Yeah,
Um,
I do think that it ultimately, like the speed at which you can expect people to play at, ultimately comes down to how experienced they are,
mhm.
and how well they know every single part of, not every single part of the game. And I don't just mean the game. And so I'm talking about how well you know the game mode. You know what I mean? I know that I've been a lot slower recently to set the game up because I'm not like the documents aren't even right, right? Like I pull up war counts and I'm like, that's not right. I know that that's the old documents. Do you know what I mean? So like that really slows things down. When I don't know the mode off by heart, I don't know all the rules off by heart. Like Dan's start cards have changed when like he'll play a card and then we both have to go and look up what the card actually does because he hasn't got a printout in there, so we both have to say, or like, what does that card do now? Do you know what I mean? Because it's changed. So like it's not just like, hey, if you're experienced, like it's fine, right? Like there's always we're talking about the very specifics of like this game mode that you know well with an army that you know well, playing against an army that you know well. Like things can go really, really fast once you're like at that level of play. But like there can always be things that slow you down, and it's interesting that people basically people don't want to be hindered. People don't want to feel hindered by the fact that they don't know their opponent's army. But at the same time, a person who does know everything about the game feel like maybe they should be given value for that, right? Like they should that you are experienced and uh, you know well researched, shall we call it, player who like knows everything about your opponent's lists. That should be a benefit to you. Um,
was
and I think that, like I say, I think that time pressure gives value to that benefit. There was a question before about whether or not
yes,
like well, I don't know which question you're looking at, but whether or not actually I think that time is a problem in tournament games.
yeah.
I would say that my games generally don't go to time, like not like specifically, but so for me personally, what I feel is that um, effectively like there can personally I never ever give up on a game, or at least I try not to, right? Like even if I'm losing, I'm still trying to look for ways to win the game. Sometimes that means that I need there to be more turns, right? Like I need the game to go the entire length. That's one of the times that I feel this pressure the most is, I might be losing like 6-4, right? And I need us to go into a fifth and a sixth round. Like I need to keep your score down to 8 and 9 points. And like the game could finish 9-8 to you in round 5 by time, as an example, right?
Mhm.
And I will lose at that point, but I think that I have a chance to win the game on turn 6.
Yeah,
Now, does it actually finish on round 5 because of time? Maybe, maybe not. But the pressure I feel is that I need the game to go the full length. and you're taking a long time, then I feel that I have to play incredibly quickly, like recklessly quickly. I actually can't even think about my own choices properly. I can't think about my decisions properly because I have to play double speed to make sure that you keep time, right?
Yeah.
And that's the only time when I'm like, God, I wish there was a chess clock here because I feel that we've got this 2 hour game and I think that you're taking an hour and a half of it and I'm taking half an hour of it, right? Or, like less extreme, it could be an hour and 20 and 40 minutes. You're taking like twice as long as I am to take your turns, maybe. Or actually, in reality, there's something around 20 minutes of dead time between us. Round selection, setting the game up, stuff like that. You've taken 1 hour and I've taken 40 minutes. And we're going to get to time and we might not finish the sixth round. Whether or not it actually happens or not isn't important. That I feel that I have to play unreasonably quickly to make sure that it doesn't happen. And I have to play recklessly quickly. I know that if there's any kind of timing disparity between players, if a player is just genuinely a very, very slow player, we might not even be under time pressure. We might be playing for 4 hours. But if one person is taking 3 of those hours and the other person is taking 1 of those hours, then it's incredibly detrimental to the quicker player. Like the quicker player will become agitated by the speed at which the slower player plays. They will make faster and faster and faster snap decisions because they want the game to speed up and they're trying to show their opponent how quickly they want them to play. If their opponent like literally just doesn't pick up on the fact that they are slow playing in any given way, then it's a huge detriment to their opponent. And the problem is that it's beneficial to the slow player. No matter which way you look at it, whether the game goes to time or not, it's beneficial to the player playing slowly because they double, triple, quadruple think about everything. They spend ages on their positioning. They spend ages on every decision. And the fast player actually spends less and less and less times on their decisions, less times than they even normally would against a normal speed opponent. Um, and they also, I think, just get like, people effectively get somewhat like time tilted, shall we call it? Do you know what I mean? Like they just don't want to play the game for that length of time. I think that's the reality of what happens on TTS. Um, there
Yeah.
may not be real time pressure. There could actually be real time pressure in that one person's like, look, I need to go to bed. It's like, it's 2 a.m. in my
Yeah.
country, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like I agreed to play this game with you. I didn't agree to play a 5 hour game with you. Like, I need to go to bed. Like, and the other person's like, well, it's the middle of the day for me, so I don't mind. I'll just, or it's the weekend. I've got nothing else to do. Tournaments are quite different. The 2 hours, I do think that is enough time to get through the game as long as both people play with a certain speed. But problem is, like I say, the problem is if one person doesn't meet the expectation and the agreement of how quickly the other one wants to play, then it's very, very detrimental to the quicker player.
Yeah. The only other thing I was going to say was obviously certain lists and certain matchups, certain other things kind of they play out in different ways, and as a result, I mean we've seen Night's Watch matches on TTS, for example, the mirrors and things like this. They've gone on for 3 or 4 hours because they are,
Mhm.
to some extent, they are just like some rounds. It's like everything's just shuffled 3 or 4 inches, and it is kind of like, yeah, but if any of them shuffled that 4.5 inches, then actually that player probably would have just lost, because that and that was back then. There is a lot to say as well about rush play. One of the gaming against against Brian, I was hemorrhaging. I never say this word properly, and I'm not going to say it. I was taking trays off his army, but I wasn't necessarily going up on VPs, right? I was killing units worth points, but the way that the board was and the control and things like that, I'm not necessarily gaining a huge advantage over him. And I realized that actually, specifically the last, we had like 18, 20 minutes left to go, and it was like they said we had about that long left. And for me, it was like, well, hang on. I'm opening player, I'm playing free folk, I have the opportunity to just play Endless Horde and put a raider unit on the board if I want to. Because I've lost a unit at this point, I can just bring on a raider unit and just throw him up the board over here and probably kill, wipe out a unit of my opponent, push him off the board on that objective, and I maybe get a standard victory over a crushing, over a minor, sorry, because the game was close. But the problem was, I was like, but hang on, that doesn't necessarily pay off for me this round. That might take me an extra round to do. If this game goes to round 6, I 100% of the case, outside of crazy dice rolls, I'm in a much better position. I've got more units on the board. He's played both of his Endless Hordes. I'm going to win this game. I have the resources.
Mm-hmm.
That way, nothing against Brian at all. But in that sense, he wasn't slow playing or anything like that. It's just the nature of the matchup. But vice versa, the game was never going to go to round 6 at that rate. So it was much better for me to play for a quick smash and grab, because actually that works out better for me in the short term. There's things like that do happen in tournaments, and we've seen it. I've literally seen it happen in events as well, where people are like, right, well, we're nearing the time thing. I'm going to make quite a reckless play, but the reckless play solidifies a win for me, rather than actually makes it a crushing win or something like that. So, yeah, it's... I don't have a problem with time. I've never really had an issue with it. But it is a thing that obviously that plays into the game and is important. On topics from chat, I'm going to go actually read other questions that we have had. And this one was a while ago. That was a long time. We spent a long time talking about time. This is from Carly. What was the toughest decisions in the tournament for yourself and myself? I know one tough decision I had, which was the Endless Horde one I just discussed there. That was a tough decision because I had the opportunity to go, right, well, I'm going to win the game if I do this. I win the game if I just activate some Thens and kill off Tormund Commander with my order. But I don't objectively know which one is going to be better for me in the short term versus the long term, and if the game's going to go long term. Aside from that, decisions in Carlo's games, or in Carlo's game, I made a poor decision, a bad decision on a predictable movers on round 1, which I did think was the right play to make at the time, but probably wasn't. But yeah. So, Carlo?
Definitely the single hardest choice was in the game against Dan, against Starks. I had Drogo stuck in on very low wounds. He was engaged by the unit of Sworn Swords in the front and Eddard's Honor Guard in the flank.
Oof.
And then I had some very low health veterans. I think, I might have healed them up a bit by now, but they're like basically my two hard hitting units. They were both in trouble. They were both quite isolated. They were both in a bad place. But I was opening round 3, right? Like, so this wasn't where I thought I was going to be. I thought I was going to be pushing through and really, like this was going to be the point where I took the game. I'm nearly always playing for, like, if I'm first on round 1, I'm playing for a huge play at the start of round 3 to like really take the game. Or if I'm playing on turn 2, then if it turns up on turn 2, then yeah, sure. But basically, I'm playing for turn 4, right? Like, and I'm playing to like minimize my loss on turn 3 to move to a powerful turn. But here we were on my powerful play, and I only had risk. Like, I had nothing good. I would hope. The Sworn Swords in front of me, they could possibly be killed by a swords attack by Drogo, but that doesn't get me out of combat with Eddard. And I was also very, very scared at the time of Fury for the Fallen. So in the end, the decision I made was to activate Drogo and play Ride by Attack, get out of combat. Even though it didn't even kill the Sworn Swords on 3 wounds in front of me. But just this decision about whether or not to open with swords, which is like basically a play I had planned for since literal deployment. Like, my entire game had been set up that, like, I will kill something with Drogo at the start of round 3. And the way things had played out, it just wasn't going to happen for me. Like it wasn't there. And it was a very hard decision to abandon what felt like it had been my entire game strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not it's the right choice, I don't know. Like, I still don't know. Actually, Dan responded with a swords assault orders because I left the tactics board open. Of course, I activated first instead of taking an NCU first. Went against all of my own gut feel, like of good play. But I did it anyway because I had the card and I thought it might save me. It did force him to play assault orders, which is an important card. So I effectively drew that out. It would have been a risk to attack with Drogo to hopefully kill the unit, and he might have died anyway. So basically, yeah, I definitely feel like that was the hardest choice I made at the start of round 3 against Dan. And I
Yep.
guess I won the game in the end. I guess I won,
Yep.
but it wasn't. It wasn't a decision I was happy with at the time. I felt like I only had bad choices. I think when you're having to make really hard choices, it's because you only have bad choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Um. All right. So, I've just distracted Carlo for a moment. More on that
Yeah.
in like 2 seconds. Yeah. So, decisions. There are always difficult ones, right? Every game has probably a moment of a difficult decision. Most games,
Mhm.
but the level of that difficulty, it's like sometimes it's like the difficult decision is not that impactful. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. Like it's a case of, oh, how do I do this versus how do I do that, versus how do I turn this situation into a winning one. Um, that's a much harder decision to come to. And there are times, certainly in the game against Carlo, where there's key decisions that I perhaps made mistakes with, but there are decisions later on where I'm so deep in a hole of like this is a bad position. Every
Mhm.
decision I now make has to be good, because if I make a bad decision again, I'm further in the hole. I have to make impactful, difficult decisions for my opponent to try and manage. And sometimes, you're actually in a position, and and players know this. Carlo's very aware of this. Sometimes it actually isn't a good decision you can make anymore. There's just the best out of a terrible lot of decisions.
Yeah,
Um,
interestingly, I would say that like once your decisions become like really terrible, they become easy again
yeah.
because like there's only one like realistic one, or basically you're like, well, they're all terrible, so this one could go amazingly. Like it's very unlikely, but you know what? Like I lose unless I make this 6-up charge. So you know what? Let's just go for the 6-up charge, right?
Yep.
Like you're losing, but like there's one clear route of terrible choices to get you back into the game, right? But it's when you have a lot of choices, or more to the point, like you've got this thing that you think would have been the best choice, and then now everything's making you want to go against it. You had a plan. I find the hardest choices for me are where I have these set routines. Like I open the round with swords is so common. Do you know what I mean? Like setting up my big attacks, setting up my big plays, and then if I have to deviate from that, that's the hard choice. The hard choice is like making plays that deviate from what I consider to be good play.
I always remember that dragon game where I was up on VPs and you were trying to table me, and you could have tabled me, to be brutally honest. And the decision of the game, which came down to, I made a retreat out to try and just get into a charge position, and you attacked Tormund, and I was like, I have to roll a 6 here, or like a 5 to charge you, and I have to do 7 wounds to a dragon in the rear with an attack that does 7 dice of attacks, and if I don't, you win, and if I do, I win. And I went in and I did the 7 wounds, and it was like, what'd you do? I mean, like that's not a decision that really was like, I'm clever and I'm super intelligent. It was one of these kind of like, wow, fucking great. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, um, let's change the scenery. Fuck this up.
Wow.
Let's go back to here. It works on here fine. Shouldn't have brought the Visions back. I haven't used the Visions background in like literally forever. Oh, is that muted? Were we muted on there? We were literally even muted on there. I am fucking brilliant.
Awesome. Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. Never use other scenery, guys. The other one, this Visions one, that one is bad. Also, celebrate GN. He said, yay, no sound. Also, turns out that muting everyone on the stream, Carlo, is the best way to get engagement. There we go. Oh, no. Anyway,
Why do you guys turn up? For everybody who answered Mickey's questionnaire, thank you. Mickey's questionnaire was prompted because I asked Mickey, why the fuck do people turn up to Tourney grounds? It's shit. We can't even get audio properly.
that was literally a fucking mistake. Turns out, like, if you don't use one of your scenes in literally forever, then don't just randomly use it when something comes up. Anyway, there we go. These apparently, according to
they look a lot like Thingy Knights.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite literally a guy who's posted on the main group who may or may not be Italian or could be Spanish. His name is 3 Chinese/Japanese characters, and he said, "Leak from garbage of factory." So these could be quite literally from the back of a garbage truck. So what have we got? Well, I think it's clear to say that, as Carlo says, these are the Golden Company swordsmen.
Swordsmen. They're just called swordsmen. They're called knights, right? Like, yeah, Golden Company swordsmen.
Yep.
I don't like them.
I mean, they're not good quality. They're probably promo, like, test models and things like this, right? And the image quality, like, take everything that you're seeing and what we're about to say with a massive grain of this is salty and or not true. This could be like test models. It could be literally anything. We've not seen these from CMON or from a CMON source or anything like this. So this could be literally anything.
Yeah. I mean, renders look surprisingly nice, right? Like they managed to create nice lighting, nice shadowing, stuff like that. But I don't know. Like I don't like the guy in the top right helmet.
His pose is okay, but it's generic.
Yeah, like his pose is okay. The guy in the top middle, I don't like his pose. He's weird. I'm going to guess that the guy in the bottom left is some kind of commander because we wouldn't expect 6 sculpts without one.
Yeah, so like a captain
attachment. Yeah. And he does look attachment worthy. He has a more exciting shield than the rest, and he's got a commanding pose. I think he's about the only model. Bottom left, K24, is about the only one that I actually like.
Yeah. K21 is okay. Reminds me of Rose Knights. In fact, he is the sculpt. I guess if anyone is interested and has this got some semblance of reality to it, that is the sculpt that we saw on the CMON reveal page back in when they first showed us a bunch of images on a screen, including the large new mountain. So he looks a little bit like the Rose Knight without the plumes and things. I think he's a fine sculpt. It's a weird pose, but it's a fine sculpt. Like, it's fine. I like the idea of the bloke with the banner. It just hasn't worked. Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what it is, or it possibly is? You know what always feels odd to me, like, and maybe it's like an intrinsic like bias against them. You know what I mean? Not the people, but the sculpts. Is I don't like most of the sculpts that they make when they're left-handed. Why are 3 of these models left-handed?
Well, 4 if you include the banner.
4 of them. 4 of the 6. Banner's left-handed. He's holding his sword in his left hand. Bucket helm in the bottom right, holding it in his left hand. You know, guy advancing up in the top right, left-handed, top, middle, left-handed. That is weird. Like such a weird decision. Like who is sculpting as many left-handed sculpts as there are right-handed? Like people didn't fight left-handed. Like even if you were left-handed, you didn't fight left-handed.
So Carlo's anti-left-handed.
Yeah, I am.
I'm
No, but
gonna.
no, but like 1 in 10 people are left-handed.
Yeah, I know. It's really rare. Um, yeah. No, I have no idea. It seems really strange. I bought a load of neutrals over the weekend, by the way, and I've just been getting on neutrals, thinking like, what other models are left-handed? And it's the
100% the
blackguards, right?
blackguard are left-handed.
Yeah, the blackguards.
All blackguards are left-handed.
Yeah. The cutthroats. Cutthroats are left-handed. Hang on. Yeah.
I think there are a number of cutthroats, yeah, who hold the weapon in their left hand and hold nothing in their right hand.
Yeah. So this guy, this is my left, by the way, guys. Hello. Yeah, he's left-handed. Yeah.
And just it is when I think about all the models that I don't like in the game, or like units as a whole, where I'm just like those sculpts are weird. They're nearly always left-handed. Maybe I'm biased.
What a terrible person,
maybe I have
Carlos.
an unreasonable hatred of lefties, but yeah, I don't know. Not. I'd normally like. I absolutely love Rose Knights. I love Wardens. I love a paladin figure, right? Like an armored knight. Love it. These should tick every single box for that, and I don't like them.
I'm going to say something really weird as well. And I know that they are Golden Company, they are mercs, you know, there's a lot to say about that. They aren't uniform enough for mercs while being too uniform. Do you know what I mean? Like, the thing that bugs me.
I think I understand what you mean, sort of.
Yeah.
The helmets are too different, like they're very different style helmets, very different style armors, very different positions, even different shields.
Yes, which is fine. That's fine for a bunch of mercs. But then why are they all sword and shield? Because a lot of mercs wouldn't be like that. They'd actually have their own armaments. They're all basically long sword and shield. That's just not how they would have worked, even if they were a formed unit.
Paul says, maybe all these guys become neutral. It seems just like neutrals are left-handed for some reason. Maybe all these guys become neutral because they get kicked out of their entire house. They get kicked out of where they're born for being lefty, and they just have to go on a life of neutrality.
Maybe that's it. Maybe the answer to the eternal question of what makes a man neutral, as Littlefinger has posted every now and then. What makes a man neutral? Being left-handed. That's what makes you neutral. Paul said, by the way, Paul Spurgeon, it seems like you're saying you got these picks from Dave down the pub. It does feel like that we got them from Dave down the pub. It really does. Also, Paul, for your question earlier, when are we going to come down to Essex and play? When I get the opportunity to, I will. I would like to come down. Give me an excuse to visit the family as well, which, God forbid, anyone does that. All right. Should we move on to the other thing that we've got? That's Golden Company Swordsman. And this is them Lannister Lions of Honor Guard, Castle Rock, that one. Now this is a bad picture. I'm not gonna lie, this is a fucking awful picture. But
yeah, I really hope that's a bad picture because they look.
Yeah, it's a bad picture. The pixel
terrible. These guys look like anime knights.
Do you know who I do like? G24, the is definitely like a commander unit style again. He's fine. Absolutely fine.
Yeah, he's the closest to acceptable.
Yeah.
I don't like how high the shoulder guards come. Like they honestly look like they come from like Final Fantasy 14 or World of Warcraft or something like that, where they like wear pauldrons which are like humongous. I don't like anything. Yeah.
I'm doing
Yeah.
G23's moment of like slightly falling over sideways.
Yeah,
Like,
G23 could hopefully, maybe, possibly, like be like slightly warped.
I
You might be
hope
able to
he is.
maybe bend his ankles back so that he's not leaning to the left. Till then, God,
The thing is, like, the poses aren't even bad. Like, G22 and G21 aren't like stereotypically bad poses. They are classic knightly poses, you know, shield in front, sword behind, or sword raised above with leading shield. Like, those are classic. Like, the G21, by the way, is basically exactly the same as the sculpt for the Stormcrow Mercs. One of the Stormcrow Mercs is basically exactly the same sculpt,
yeah,
but it looks worse.
yeah. I think G22 is the best of them, and I think maybe that's because he either has no helmet or he's like leaning down so that his helmet looks like it's his face. But there's something about the way that
The
the
lion
helmet comes
head.
really high, or God, I don't like anything in their top half. I don't like anything about them. I'm so disappointed.
And yeah, Soren points out G26 is just awful. Yeah, this now this is going to be pixelated because I'm obviously zooming right in at this point. This kind of stance with the tiny little banner, the banner's rubbish. It's too small for a supposedly honor guard unit. You'd want their banner to be massive.
It's also the red cloak banner. It
Yeah,
is literally the red cloak banner. Like it's just been redone with that lion head at the top is the only
yeah.
new bit. But
And
literally lion.
just point out,
And
like, I mean, Napoleonics, medieval, slightly different, right? But Napoleonic era kind of troops when you still had honor guard around, like Napoleon's guard, cavalry, and things like this. And it was very much a Napoleonic thing anyway. But it was still true of slightly pre that and post that. But like having banners and having this big sigil of who you were was vitally important on the battlefield to the point where like there was a thing where you'd capture the enemy's colors and controlling the other person's standards was an actual thing in the battlefield. Um, I'm not even gonna lie. If I was G26 here, that's his name now, by the way, just G26. If I was G26, I'd literally drop this. I'd just be like, nah. Why am I carrying this around? Shit. Leave it home.
now that we've zoomed in on him, G24, like his helmet is crazy. Like his little head with a helmet here. Oh God, I don't. No.
His head. Hang on. His head ends
What
there,
have they
and the
done to
helmet
my
ends here.
beautiful Lannisters?
Oh dear.
How many of them left-handed? The banner bearer is
the banner bearer is the only one.
They seem to love this idea that the banner bearer holds the banner in the right hand and then holds their weapon in the left.
Which no one did.
They
Everyone
do
held
that
banners
loads.
two hands. Everyone
Yeah.
held banners two-handed. You wouldn't wield a
Yeah.
sword and a banner, and if you then had to use the banner, you would use your sword in the right hand, and you potentially wouldn't even have a shield necessarily, but you just use your weapon in your right hand. You never wielded a sword and a banner at the same time.
Yeah. And Ilya's absolutely right. Like these are just like literally from an MMO over the top armor, the stuff where like okay, it is literally like an MMO, and this actually feels like a reality here, which is like they've basically made a load of good stuff, right? They were really happy with it. Now they need to make new content, and they have to ask themselves, how do we make it cooler than it used to be? Because this is supposed to be better than the other stuff, right? So how do we make it? How do we make people want this even more? Or how do we signify with like its visuals that this is better than the other thing? And it's like, make it bigger, make it pointier, make it like crazier, like pointing.
I'm just gonna show up the new Lannister sculpt. By the way, I've also been given this. So this is actually super secret. I've had this for a while. This is the new Lannister armor that they're introducing for Tywin when his new armor comes out for the third version of Tywin that we're gonna get. Are you ready? For those of you who are listening on the podcast and don't get to see all this magic, I've just shown the Dragon Slayer armor set from Dark Souls. Yeah, this is. I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie. I think this armor looks better. Okay, it's a 3D render. Okay, it's more graphic. That looks better than this. This is completely fantasy made up. This is mild fantasy made up. um,
Yeah. I really I hope that they look better in person.
I
But
really do. I mean, these, as I was saying, like, if these have fallen out of a garbage truck in the middle of France or Italy or Spain or wherever, right, and have been picked up some guy, random Chinese guy, and like pasted to some Italian place, um, yeah, they they could be just very early like sculpts and renders and things like that, and just like early test models, um, which
but
would.
I don't believe that. I don't.
Do you know why I
A
would?
model. You don't just. This is pictures of real models. This isn't renders, right? You do a render, you get people's opinion on it.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
it's
like,
not.
no, I don't like it. You make changes. By the time that you've gone to molding and made and produced models, like you're deep to the expense. I don't think you're changing it unless like literally the mold doesn't work, or maybe one of the six. You're like that one is crap. Like we have to change this one of the six of them. But like
Well,
six are bad.
I propose this one to you actually. I know that they're trying to move towards doing 4 sculpts in a box, but actually the vast majority of the time they only do 3 for the older boxes. They've gone towards more 4 now, but referring to them as G21, G22, G23, 24, 25, 26, that's the kind of thing that would happen in a factory or anything like that for product code for this is what they look like produced. So this was probably a test mold of the initial production and being like, this is the products that we have in the box. This is the things that get produced. This is roughly what they look like. This is what they are. Maybe even something dumb like this is what you should be producing, like to instructions. Um, so yeah, the text is the default font used by the Chinese plastic factories. Yeah. So it says to me that this is probably a molding thing or a factory production thing of like you're going to put bits together. You're making G21s today. The G21 that you're making should look like this. Um,
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Something like that.
I can see that line of thought.
Yeah. No
But
way.
what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is that I think this is the product that we're getting. I
Yeah.
believe that this is the product that's going to arrive. I don't think these are gonna. I don't think they're going to change wildly. They might not. The slightly weird lean on them. They might maybe be a tiny bit different. Like, but I really don't see it myself. I think that this is what you should expect to get in that box.
I've
Overall, I think they're quite disappointing.
just had another image sent to me from Leet Teddy. As we know, Chris is in massive talks with Simon all the time about the upcoming new sculpts as well. So we've got the really amazing thing coming up for us soon. This is the new Jamie.
Too true.
Yeah, no. I'm just gonna say they're okay. Do you know what I mean? Like they're just okay. They're not amazing. I hope that they look better in real life. I really hope that the quality of the images that we're seeing here is so bad that they look better in real life. I'm not even gonna lie, right? This could be the quality of the image, but I'm going to go back to the swordsman here for a second. But Kate 22, do you not think he looks a little bit like an alien?
I think that's being unfair to the image quality.
Maybe.
Maybe like, do you know what I mean?
I
Like,
hope
I
it
think
is.
he's unhelmeted. Like he actually would maybe. I mean, it could be a hairline, could be better, but like the overall pose, overall like aesthetic is a thing that I think is off on both of them. I think that the Lannisters make the Golden Company look passable.
Yeah. Anyway, there you go. That was a thing. I'm glad I randomly just found that. It's oh god, yeah, of course. didn't occur to me that G24, the model in the bottom left here, um, if it's anything that we are thinking might come out, this could be the Sentinel Enforcer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
presumably, yeah,
yeah,
because fits the bill. I don't know if he has exactly the same shield, but the Sentinel Enforcer, roughly speaking, has that shield, has that armor style. He didn't have. He was unhelmeted.
yes.
That's why we've never seen this before. But yeah,
Not looking good, is it? Well, I mean, I can't say it's not looking good. Just a bit of a shame.
I don't like him. I don't like him. You know, that's just disappointing because normally they really hit the mark, especially recently. You know,
Yeah, much.
I think mostly they knock it out the park. But ever since I saw even we saw the box art image of these guys, I was already worried. You know, I was already thinking that doesn't look good. And I think the modelers have actually just followed the brief of what they've been given, which is way over the top. Like I actually don't. I think given what they've been told to make, given what like they seem to be heading for, they've actually achieved what they wanted to go for. But I think that's crazy aesthetic, a crazy anime style MMO game, end game paladin, as Ilya says. Like it is so unrealistic, and the game outside of the dragons, do you know what I mean? Like outside of the dragons and some really unique things to the world, the game has always been relatively well grounded
Yeah,
in some kind of reality, and I think that they don't fit the aesthetic of that.
no, no. Yeah, they're just they're the Golden Company swordsmen are fine. They look like they don't quite fit the bill from dismounted hedge knights, which is what I would have liked to have seen perhaps a little bit more of. Obviously, they're not dismounted hedge knights, but that would have been the aesthetic I would have liked. I mean, the hedge knight models are lovely. If you've not picked up a box of hedge knights, pick them up. The models, the 4 unique sculpts you get in that box are nice. And people do some really great stuff. There is scope with the Golden Company here with what looks like to be flat shields and other things. There's a lot of scope for modding. I do think that the likes of Dan from our club, Carlo, will get his hands on these. Tim might get his hands on these and do some really nice stuff with them.
Yeah,
But
I do think that the neutrals, particularly, like they look like maybe given a bit more variety, you could actually come up with 12 very unique sculpts that look good. Like I think that they're very, because there is enough difference in their armor.
yeah,
It really opens the door to you adding any other bits that you want in, some new weapons, more different helmet styles, more bucket helmets if you want to put them on, different ranges. And I think that can mix and match really well. I think that they have room for good conversions here. Um, I outside of like head swapping every single one of them, and even then, I still think shoulders are over the top, and I don't really know how you rescue them. I don't know what.
those pauldrons do annoy me. Yeah, looking again at them now, and I know you said before about them not being too high, but like the bit that's actually annoying me now is I'm pretty sure like it's not that the pauldrons are coming up like high up the head, but like if you took the helmets off these blokes, I'm pretty sure the pauldrons would actually be like to the level of the top of their head. And
Yeah,
that's really fucking stupid for combat design because you now have a 90-degree arc of vision because you can't look over your shoulder anymore because there's a big block of metal in the way. Um,
you
and
also
also,
can't get axed in the side of the head because it
well,
would
no,
just hit
no,
you in the
so
pauldron.
that's actually the thing. You can because the pauldron brings your arm up and you go, oh, and you knock yourself out with your own pauldron. um,
True. Either
That's
that or it leaves enough space that someone's still just going to come in here.
yeah. That's actually a
Over
thing, by
the
the way. If
top.
anyone doesn't know about like medieval pauldrons and stuff, if they are too high, there's actually a genuine chance that people end up with like lacerations and things around their neck and around their head from their own like armor. It's an actual thing. There's armor smiths will go into a long time into designing armor with you. There's loads of videos online you can read up about it. God, we watch some random shit on YouTube, don't we, Carlo?
You do.
You were telling me about how you watch random gambling.
I like maths.
It- Fair enough.
I like math.
And also people going to Las Vegas and cheating the system. Anyway, all right. So that was a bit out of random. Anyway, back to Redcar.
I mean, Leap Teddy is right. If you rock up to the battlefield looking like that, you better be killing dudes left, right, and center. Because if not, you're just gonna be a dead prat.
I bet Lannister design, right? Lannister design, and the Sentinel Enforcer comes with taunt, right? I reckon they're gonna have on their native unit taunt and shield wall. Because I think they're going to be shite. Yeah.
So because Kevin and Tywin both have Lannister supremacy, I think they expect you to put Kevin and or Tywin in them.
I
So
do
they
think they
won't
could
have
come with
Lannister supreme,
They could
even
come with
though
shield wall
Lannister,
in that sense.
yeah,
But I do think
even
they'll
though
probably do
Lannister
that.
supremacy is like the one thing that makes Taunt less terrible. I don't know what they're gonna have. I don't know. Maybe they'll have the old maybe they'll have old red cloak rules and just cost 7 points.
Zap, 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 zap. Or they'll be broken and have the old red cloaks with +3 wounds as well, like +1 wound for every rank, which is like every time I do an action, I'll just Lannister supremacy. That would be a big fucking please no.
Pavel says he bets on Sentinel.
It's been discussed.
Yeah, not impossible. Yeah.
And that immediately makes them not terrible in Lannisters because movement shenanigans in Lannisters are shit, or should I say non-existent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, that was kind of Redcar, how the event went there into some random leaks and stuff. Abiscius says probably won't have taunt if the Enforcer has it. That's exactly why they will have taunt. Remember, this is Lannister design space. They've got to have some ridiculously stupid overlap where the attachment doesn't work in its own unit. Like old Starks. We also had some other stuff as well that happened over the weekend. Carlo, very quickly, people have said, thanks to the survey, right? You'll never get there. You'll never believe this, right? But all of the things that they said that they come and talk us for, believe it or not, number one from you guys was they come here for in-depth discussions on different topics. Well, you've had chess clocks. That's all you're getting today. Carlo, by the way, this is the least the least wanted thing for Carlo to talk about is in-depth conversations on topics. He doesn't want to have to do that on Monday live because it requires far too much.
Not in-depth. Not in-depth discussions on topics. In-depth discussions on game tactics is actually the thing that, like, I just don't think that they can be discussed non-visually. And without like examples and like specifics of lists, stuff like that. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like that's such a hard thing to discuss.
But discussing meta and to keep updated with the news with the other two big ones up there, there are other ones on there like hot takes on new releases. Interestingly, Carlo, very disappointingly, because it is my favourite segment of the week, really, and for those people who do enjoy it, it is clearly their favourite segment of the as well. The least popular segment is you handing out zeros.
Or not.
Yeah, it's a big shame. Best moment of the day for me is seeing you give 0 to something. Anyway, we will do some meta discussion quickly, and this fits into what people really want, which is discussion of inverted commas meta. You know, Carlo hates the word, that's why I had to be careful and put it in inverted commas. And looking at lists from events, Carlo, your Drogo list. I know you run it in a pairing the Grey Worm. Did you actually want to talk about it and actually explain why Drogo, why this list, or is it really just kind of like, it's easy, mate? This is why.
No, yeah, I can discuss it. You know, I think that Drogo is strong. If you look at his deck, I boil him down. Interestingly, you know, he has 4 cards, right? I boil him down entirely to 1 card, which is Assault Orders. That Assault Orders allows a charge with Drogo himself is very important. And I think that it's important that it says, for me, that means that Drogo is in a powerful unit. And that gives us Blood Riders, it gives us Flayed Men, and it gives us Veterans, right? So for me, I know some people talk about like, oh, you know, Screamers are almost as good. You know, I can save yourself 2 points there. Drogo like fits well in them. Good pairing of abilities. Personally, because of the existence of Assault Orders, because Drogo is the only person who can take advantage of that, it's worth putting that extra 2 points in and taking an 8-point unit. Now, when we look at those 3 options, Flayed Men are the ones that make most advantage of Assault Orders, right? They are incredibly damaging on the charge. They are very damaging when already stuck in, because so much of their damage comes from their panic-based damage. Whereas the Blood Riders, they're much more of a support tool because of the fact that Warcry can help your veterans really push through damage, etc. So for me, that's why I run him in Blade Men right now, because yes, veterans are a great unit. Yes, Blood Riders are still good, like, you know, like really up there. They're basically as good as Flayed Men, except that Assault Orders really doubling down on Drogo himself being the driver of this list, I think says that Flayed Men's the most important and best place to put that. Before the Blood Rider nerf, I felt that Fueled by Slaughter meant that you could be incredibly aggressive and incredibly all in on Drogo in the Blood Riders. I became a better Drogo player once I really sifted through the deck and worked out that Adjuvat and Lead by Example might as well only say draw, attack this card.
Yep. Okay.
Literally. At least in my lists, in the way that I'm running them, Adjuvat, Lead by Example, bin them instantly. Draw a new card. Ride by Attack, Jorah has a weird place within. Sometimes it can get you out of a bad situation where you like want to be on the other side of a unit, but you're like stuck engaged with them, but you can't kill them. But it effectively only works on movement 6 units. So it only works on veterans, really, in reality, or Jorah, because a movement 5 unit can't jump through a unit. It can only kind of glance it, and that's if you're not engaged.
Yeah.
So of those 4 cards, Assault Orders is the only one that matters, and yet I believe in Assault Orders so much that he is a worthwhile commander for that one thing. There is an added bonus, which is that Adjuvat and Lead by Example help you play through your deck quicker. I might not be happy with Drogo if those 2 cards didn't allow me to draw cards.
Mm-hmm.
Swift Retreat, is the card
Sudden,
that he
sudden
removes
retreat.
from the deck. Sudden Retreat. You also have to consider with Targaryen commanders what card you remove, and there are some that are incredibly important. Sudden Retreat is not the best card to lose, but it's also not the worst. You know, Swift Reposition, super important card in my opinion. Overrun, entirely based on the situation, but mostly a pretty weak card, I would say. Moving on through the deck, Fire and Blood is one of my favorite cards, actually. I use it aggressively, often for the charge reroll, Field control, we all know that I think that it is the number one reason to play Targaryens effectively because it can win you entire matchups. But mostly it's worthless. But just the fact that it can win you certain matchups makes it important. And Blood of the Dragon is also a great, great card of all the quest cards, the get back in the game cards, counter kill cards. I think that Blood of the Dragon has some of the best effects. +1
Yeah.
attack die and the -1 wound is really, really top rated. Very, very good on Drogo or in veterans list. Unstoppable advance, neither here nor there.
Whoa,
Like
whoa, whoa! Can I just point out, Carlo, that you've played Unstoppable
I
Advance
did play
for the
Unstoppable advance.
bottom action, and
Yep.
it wasn't a
First ever
complete and utter
time
dream.
I took a +3 move on the Search for. Um, yeah, which actually, it got me onto the center objective, and I mean, scored me not just one VP for getting onto it, but it scored it to me the next turn as well. So I guess scored me 2 victory points, but
I mean,
it was literally the first time I've ever used that, and I've played Drogo a lot of times. Um, Overall, so I think that creates quite a strong deck. If I could personally keep sudden retreat, I probably would, and I personally would like. I'd rather maybe get rid of unstoppable advance, or although unstoppable advance can allow really interesting things with palisades as well. You can do a lot with terrain. Personally, I'm finding like I often set up for it and then I don't have it at the right time. Therefore, it becomes a real liability because I've set up for like a really interesting play and then it's out. Actually, I'd also happily swap it out for Overrun myself. I think that overrated because of the fact that it's an amazing thing at one time.
yeah,
And Drogo and Zorst Ride is what I think of that. No, I don't like that myself, Paul. It's not terrible, but again, we're cheaping out on the unit that I want to be my dominant force, right? And me, I like to be able to I think that flayed men are strong enough that you can slam them into the front of stuff. You don't be really clever, really tricky, and get into flanks and stuff like that. This is a blunt force instrument that just hits things in the face and then hits them again. And this is a really important part where I say it hits them and then it hits them again, because to me, what makes this list powerful is that it has 2 power pieces. We might as well move on to the list, but
yeah,
Assault Orders is a large part of that. It can get you a charge when your opponent might not expect it, get you a double activation, get you a charge and then an attack later in the round when your opponent thinks that it's not possible. Unlikely that the board's not full. But the list as a whole also has the Dothraki veterans as another power piece. Now, this is rare, I would say, to have 2 8-point cavalry units. Technically, with the Fortune Seeker, it's actually a 9-point unit. I've spent 70 points on these cavalry, plus my commander, who has a good 2-3 points of value in him. I'm putting 20 points practically into these units, and yet, very importantly, everything else that I buy bring me to 8 activations. This means that in an 8 versus 8 game, I can still rely on a turn 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 where I get a charge at the end of the round and then I open with after it. Salt Orders becomes another thing on top of that. So I think that it's so important to invest heavily in that play, to use everything else to set yourself up around that. That is why the Stormcrow Mercenaries with the Unsullied Officer exist for 7 points, bring 2 activations, and 12 wounds, which is quite important because you can bring 2 activations for say 6 points in some places, but you're not going to bring that many bodies to the table, and it can work quite differently depending on what exactly we're talking about.
yeah. I mean, it's
Um,
basically only wolves or
Yeah,
freedmen
yeah, yeah.
at that point.
Wolves, freedmen. Other than that, we're talking about 4-point pairings and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So we have this dual system, effectively. I think you should think of the list in 2 different ways. There's the flayed men and the Stormcrow mercenaries who bring activation advantage, and Drogo Flayed Men are looking to double tap things. They're looking to double down. They're looking to charge things and free themselves up and make another attack at the start of the next round. Or maybe they're looking to use an Assault Order's charge and then use his own activation to attack again.
Mhm.
Now, there is. Sorry, I was just distracted by whether discussion about whether or not my audio was good today, and I was like, "Oh no, people have been missing this entire audio because it's bad."
No, it's going great.
And then there is another part to the list which actually functions entirely independently of it, which is the Dothraki veterans and Jorah Mormont pair incredibly well together.
Yeah.
Jorah, obviously, to use his order to scout weakness or expose weakness
Openings.
or scout openings. Yeah, that's what it's called. And then the veterans utilize the whole range of abilities, which is that they can activate maneuver, take a shot off of that maneuver, and then they can charge or they can shoot again. They've got the whole action ahead of them. And Jorah allows them to gain that rerolls to hit and precision on that entire attack. It means that they can double shoot, very powerful. They can shoot and charge, very, very powerful. They can use that shift to, more easily get into flanks. These guys are not there to charge things in the front. They're there to be tricky, maneuver. As the game goes on, these guys become more and more and more powerful. Drogo, on the other hand, is a very, very strong opening to just hit somebody in the front and start to pull units around and create a focal point for the battlefield. That's why I think that his 3 point save, this 3+ save is very, very important because he leads the charge. Goes out there first and then takes counter hits. That's why I don't like him in Screamers with a 5+ save. Don't like him in Source Riders. You don't have sudden retreat.
Yeah.
It's very, very rare that a list put out a dual threat in that way, two incredibly powerful units in their own right, and still maintain 8 activation. And I think that's what makes the list so powerful. It does have a weakness, and that is that it has very few actual wounds on the board. So
Yes.
it is only 39 wounds in total.
Yeah.
Right? I may have 8 activations and I may have 5 on-board activations if you include Relentless, but I have a total of 39 wounds. I don't even have anywhere close to as many wounds as 4 combat units. And 3 units plus a very risky solo plus 3 NCU. That is the trade-off that you have to make to get such an aggressive outlook, to get such aggressive power from 2 units and still get to that 8 activations. Personally, I do think it's incredibly important. It's incredibly important to be able to utilize the outpositioning of your cavalry and to hit late in the round against, against equal parity lists or other lists that generally field a lot of cavalry will be around 7 activations. So you can outmaneuver other cavalry by having more activations. You can outmaneuver infantry by the fact that you are cavalry and can control the distancing better than they can. You can be in a position where I can charge you, but you can't charge me. So that means that you need to take an activation double tap effectively to get into combat with me, and that's the only thing that I have to look out for.
Mhm.
Its NCU package is Barry, who I think that is he's just my first put in with Targaryens. Like he can change the dynamic of any matchup.
Yeah.
Baelish and Illyrio are both really, really good NCUs. Illyrio having a single replacement is pretty important, and Baelish is just a very, very powerful and useful NCU. You can do intelligent things with it. There is one change which I would make to this list after having played it more and played it into a tournament. I would actually now drop the Fortune Seeker, and I would take Tycho back.
Over
I'm actually
Illyrio.
I think over Illyrio.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. Like, I think that there's a toss up there. I like having at least one zone replacement effect. Um, Baelish technically has one, but I don't really, I more mean you're about to grab the fifth zone, which nobody wanted. It's nice to be able to swap it for something.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd have to test out which one I felt. But over the weekend, I felt that I didn't use Illyrio that much. Sort of like I didn't feel that I desperately wanted him way more than I wanted the zone that I was taking anyway. Um, and that's because the way I played it and the way I wanted to play it is that you're much better off, and particularly if you bring Tycho in instead, you're much better off meeting your opponent's damage with more damage of your own rather than trying to out heal it. This isn't a sustain list. It is a list which goes and deletes activations and keeps going. Like it just keeps piling on the pressure, keeps mounting up the pressure. And at the weekend, like I tabled two of my opponents and came close. Or like threatened towards tabling the other two, so I never played the mission. I didn't play the mission once at all. All four modes, I barely went for an objective at all. I barely did anything around mission play. This was win the fight first and foremost, think about the score line afterwards. And I think once I adopted that strategy, which is way out of my own normal comfort zone, I got a lot better with the list. And it performed really, really well. 4 out of 4 wins. And I think that it's a strong list. Like I say, I'd change the Tycho. Personally, I think that it's the best list that Logs can put out right now. But it took me a while to learn how to use it. It took me a while to learn how to keep the Stormcrow mercenaries alive because they are very, very important as a 2 activation battery. It took me a while to understand when veterans were my important damage unit or when Drogo was my important damage unit. Like,
Mhm.
really have to, like, you can pressure with both, but really effectively one leads and the other one supports is the way I see it. And
Mhm.
in some matchups, and it is basically matchup dependent on whether or not double tapping with veterans is going to get you kills, or whether or not front charges with flayed men is going to get you kills. And the other one basically supports and kind of helps the first main one kind of get out of combat and declare more charges and do more.
Mhm. Um, yeah, I mean, I've played against this list far too many times. From the other side, the veterans alone are the piece you need to be the most worried about. As much as Drogo is a pain in the ass, and he is a pain in the ass. Obviously, expert duelist and things is something you have to think about, play around as an opponent player, depending on what your list looks like. The veterans are the most dangerous piece in the list naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And in my game against Carlo, somewhat helped by Clash of Kings, Drogo getting the extra VPs for killing stuff. But very much in the list I played against Carlo, and when we played the match a couple of days ago, right, Carlo, is if you can catch the veterans out early, that is your door to winning the game.
Yeah.
100%.
And even actually just bringing them down to 1 rank, which again is why I think that Tycho is really, really important, because
Yeah,
the veterans' power is being able to roll 7 dice twice in a round,
yeah,
right? As soon as you make them roll 4 dice twice in a round because they're on a single rank, they might as well just be another unit, right? Because they're effectively rolling 8 dice, except for the fact that there are 2 morale tests off the back of it. But like, morale damage is not, like so many people play very morale resistant armies. These guys, I like the duality of it. I
yeah.
think the list is very all comers. The veterans, they struggle against things with amazing armor saves, right? They they
Well, yeah.
they Well, okay, there's precision, but
Precision's
like
good.
Jorah's positioning and stuff matters around
Yeah.
that, and you can't always punch through damage
No.
because of it necessarily, right?
Yeah.
But Drogo flayed men, they care not for armor saves at all. There are very few units out there who are resistant to volume damage, so like 14 dice coming out of the veterans, and also resistant to a charge which leads to a vicious, intimidating presence. And don't forget that Khal Drogo, no matter how good your armor save is or how much hardened you have or whatever it is, Khal Drogo guarantees that one of those wounds are going through. So you're always taking that test. There is no question about that. So the duality of their threat, that there is no unit in the game really who's safe from both of those. And if you are, I challenge you this, you are safe from those two things, no way are you as maneuverable as I am. And so I'm just going to ignore you. And I'm going to maneuver around and I'm going to kill everything else.
This is, by the way, that on that point, guys. I mean, it brings up a discussion for Greyjoy and Free Folk lists. I think when it comes to playing against this kind of stuff, other factions don't. Night's Watch can do it as well, but like it's less of an option for other factions. This is exactly why when we talk about those factions looking at a 9 list to break that double activation that is possible with this Targ lists like this is unbelievably important. The moment I see Drogo lists at 7, I'm less concerned. Like, it doesn't mean they're not good lists. Like, they run exactly the same kind of list that's being run here. But I'm less concerned because I don't have the same kind of threat expectancy in the way that Carlo talks about setup. A 9 list actually allows you to navigate this much more safely, and it makes the Drogo player have to play differently, or it gives them something in the ballpark that they have to kind of like. It's a spanner in the works, right? And the only two factions that can really do that are Free Folk and Greyjoys. Realistically, I mean,
so Free Folk and Greyjoy can activate you naturally, effectively, like with lists that aren't just troll lists, right? And that's when veterans really come into their own, because these lists that are wildly out activating you, the veterans, they don't actually necessarily need to go last. They don't need to have a attack and then another attack at the start of the next round. Veterans can go and put themselves in a position where only one unit can really see them or get to them while double tapping that unit, right? And nearly all of those units that are involved in these spam armies, they go down to volume fire. They go down to 14 dice. You would hope to one-shot a Free Folk unit, raiders or trappers, with 14 dice and 2 tests off of the back of that. Greyjoy archers, trappers as well. Don't forget you can shoot them and you don't have to engage them. Trappers, good chance, maybe. Maybe with Asher, like maybe not, but like, yeah, I think you have a toolbox that can meet so many threats. Just quickly to answer Leica's question, I find that Jorah, until the very end of the game, where the positioning's getting all over the table, and I maybe grabbed an objective with Jorah, is about the only times that he dies, other than to Wildling Diplomacy, which is his other huge thing. I find archers can't shoot him because archers can't get, like, they are always going to get killed by veterans before we meet this range.
Mm-hmm.
He is fast enough, and I have activation advantage. So generally speaking, and also this is a quite important tactical choice with the list. If you have cavalry, I'm probably charging your cavalry.
Yeah.
And I'm ignoring your infantry. So you don't have spare cavalry kicking around to go and get him with, because I'm charging you in the front, face first, my cavalry into your cavalry, because the flayed men are great against other cav. So I find that if you just charge block with him a lot, so he mostly comes and just sits behind another unit blocking his 50%, he's almost always unchargeable. There are some times where it's a little bit annoying in terms of activation order. You can't activate him quite where you want, in the order that you want to, because the position you want him to be in either currently is blocked or is dangerous right now. So he doesn't always get to where you want him to be, and I'm willing to forego his ability to scout openings to keep him alive. If I have the opportunity to get him into range, I will, if I can do so safely. I won't push him into range if I don't think it's safe. he will literally sit in the back corner of the board, but he can maneuver 18 inches. So he can get there very, very fast. He can maneuver he can maneuver 6, march another 12, and then he can scout openings 12 inches from there. I could sit him in the corner of the board and I could still scout openings your side of the board within one turn, or like, his
Yeah.
activation, and then by the next turn I can do it. So if there's free space, he can get there very, very quickly. The time that he generally gets caught is because I've been willing to sacrifice him. I put him on a objective, generally speaking, to score a point, knowing that you will charge him and kill him first thing next round. But I'm also generally okay with that trade because it's a point for a point trade, but it's probably up your whole activation to charge him and kill him. Now you're in a position that I can counter.
Mhm.
Generally late in the game where I know that I'm up and I'm just trying to trade out points or something like
Mhm.
that. Yeah, I think that was all the questions. Yeah, so originally there was a time where this list didn't have Fortune Seeker in, and it did have it had what's his name now, Jack and Agar,
Mhm.
and Jack and Agar um, copy
Barry.
the Barristan effect. That was when that was specifically for the very common double relentless Night's Watch. If you hate and face against double relentless Night's Watch all the time, then yeah, I'd say go for that. You can block lots of relentless, lots of orders, lots of powerful effects. Consider taking out maybe for that
Maybe,
because you
yeah.
probably want the Illyrio healing. Um, the other thing that I am thinking about right now is that Fortune Seeker, is a good swap for Tycho because he allows you to take a hit back, allows you to be aggressive, put out a hit, take something back, and then just keep going. You just put Illyrio down and keep pushing on through, and just playing a trade out thing. And as I say, you've got only 39 wounds in the whole list. Adding +5 wounds to that is really quite a big swing.
Mhm. Um,
Um,
just
are there any
quickly,
thoughts about that list? I think no. In general, I think it's powerful, and I personally wouldn't make any other changes to it.
mhm,
I do think that the Fortune Seeker actually is an important part. Like until I played it a few times, I did used to like the Fortune Seeker a lot, and I think that it's actually something that I've been meaning to discuss for a while. Which is, I think, motivated by coin on an aggressive unit. So we're talking about Fortune Seeker or Bron or where else it comes up. I don't count the Stormcrow Mercs because their attack is crap, right? So like
yeah.
it's not threatening enough. But Fortune Seeker ability of motivated by coin is actually, I think, a very important ability to be able to push through damage when your opponent wants to slow the pace of the game. Your opponent wants you to open with swords, do an attack, and they will take money bags in return. But motivated by coin allows you to basically say, this is mutually assured destruction. I'm going to open with a money bag attack, and you have to attack me back. Otherwise, I'm going to attack you again. Right. And that allows you, again, feeds into this concept and idea that this list is going to win in a tabling fight. It's not going to win in an objective based mode. It's not going to win if your opponent can just sustain through the damage that you do.
Mhm. I have got a question about that and a discussion on meta off the back of that I'll follow up with in a minute. But just very quick, and I do mean very quick, thoughts on the
Mhm.
Grey Worm list. One of the questions that's come up in the chat was why the Roos Bolton in there.
So the Grey Room list is a little bit of a troll, right? Like, I mean, it's not like an actual troll, but it is again very light on wounds. I think it again comes in at 39 wounds. It's
Yep.
3 combat units and Jorah. But it is, if we count Relentless, it is a 9 activation list. How can you possibly have a 9 activation list and 39 wounds at the same time? It's almost impossible. And
Unsung
yet here it
officers.
is. And yet here it is, it's true. Not only is it a 9 activation list, but issue commands says that I could actually play anywhere up to 11 activations in a given round because I can remove order tokens, including Relentless. This is the dream situation, and the reality doesn't quite play out. The list doesn't quite play as well as you maybe hope it does. There are so many orders here. There is Shield Wall, there is Relentless, there is Set for Charge, and they all combine incredibly well with Battle Endurance. I think that Battle Endurance is an amazing card now. That's why it's Grey Worm specifically. Battle Endurance, issue commands to regenerate these tokens.
Mhm.
That's also why it's Pikeman and not Swordsman, because multiple uses for these order replenishment better than what the Swordsman offer, which is like a native stat line, which is very, very powerful. This list, I think, does work. Like, I do think it does work. And yet, when I sat down in an event and I wasn't like, oh, I want to test this list or try this list, did feel every single time like, no, but Dora is my better choice. And so maybe the reality is that this list just isn't that strong, or maybe it's more that I wasn't willing to take the risk, which is that this list needs issue commands and battle endurance, etc., to come out at the right time. So it's a riskier proposition because it's more draw dependent.
Is it, without going and starting a huge discussion, is this realistically just a list that you would run against certain opponents, as in like certain types of list matchups? Like, you're running the
It,
Drogo the most of the time, but if you're running into, say, and I really am making this up here, but if you're running into, say, a Baratheon player, then this is the list you might consider.
yeah,
Or
effectively, if I thought that I couldn't kill you with Drogo, like that I couldn't win the fight, this list has a really different dynamic, which is it's incredibly defensive. And most importantly, it has great sustain and it fights. It just gets stronger and stronger and stronger as the game goes on. Like,
Mhm.
again, I just come back to like double battle endurance on your two different pikemen who can both activate twice a round is just mental. Like, by the time you get to round 4 and round 5, the stats that these guys have, the native abilities these guys have, obscene. Like, nothing will stand against that unit at that point. Right? You just have to get there. You have to have not lost the game by the time that happens. Specifically, the NCUs, Roos is actually like the last change that I made to this list. Was a little while where I was also leaning into even more of a troll, which was that I had Pyatt Pre and Wald.
Yeah,
Um,
that list was a
that
meme.
was definitely a troll. But Illyrio is very, very powerful in this. I definitely wouldn't drop Illyrio in a moment because he is very useful into this sustain style and this countering style. And weakening your opponent while having shield wall, while having set for charge are all really, really important things. Peter Baelish, he's just the second best NCU in every list. He's there without a doubt. This third NCU, I have flipped around on. I tried Zaran Zoan, didn't think he was that great. Tried Danny. Tried Danny. She gives rerolls. But I already have Jorah, who can give rerolls, and Battle Endurance gives rerolls once you get further enough in. I think it might even be one of the first effects you
I think it
get
is,
off the top
yeah.
of my head.
On 3 out
I
of
think
3
you get
plus
it in
its
round
rerolls.
3. Exactly. And the really aggressive spike damage in this is Grey Worm in Cutthroat. They
Yep.
even get rerolls if your opponent has activated, right? The rerolls with Danny should be a better NCU, but the reality is that she doesn't really work out.
Would the token control from Danny not like the removal of tokens, so something like a weaken token or a clutch panic or something like that, is that not worth it?
Well, what decision I came to is that what Targaryens lack is they lack tokens themselves.
Yes.
Right? They lack the ability to generate tokens. They don't have any kind of devastating impact or anything like that. Even their card, Fire and Blood, doesn't give you tokens. It gives you more keywords. It gives you Sundering and Precision. It gives you stuff. Right? So I have really, really easy access to rerolls, really easy access to keywords, really easy access to good attack profiles. What I don't have easy access to is tokens to force through damage or force through an effect. That's when I landed on Roos as, well, this is just 3 free tokens throughout the game. And that's actually quite a powerful effect. In my opinion, you can equate a panic token, if used at the right time, be about 1.5 to 2 wounds, right? Even if all you're doing is re-rolling you've already failed the test, and I re-roll your D3 to get it up to an average of 2, right? That's a wound that it's worth. If I can turn a pass test into a failed test, then that's obviously however many wounds it rolls. Overall, I think that it averages out to be like just under 2 wounds, its effect, as long as your opponent doesn't remove it. And so you can see Roos, just as his passive effect, as being worth about 5 wounds across the game. And I think that that's actually quite good. I don't have any other way to generate panic tokens. And although this isn't a panic based list, it does have the cutthroats with the vicious. It's just nice to have another way, because the list can force through a damage on its attack very reliably. Um, but Roos has a place. It's a niche place. It's the third choice as the NCU. It's only because all the other in-house ones don't work. And I don't have a fifth point, in my opinion. Like, not a single point here is debatable. I couldn't lose a single one of them. So it can only be 4-point NCU. And just all the 4-point in-houses don't work. You could maybe take Pirate Pre, but like, I don't want to play a 3 NCU versus 3 NCU matchup where we both get to do our 3 NCUs. I'd rather play quite a negative matchup where somebody does lose their last action, because what I gain from my third NCU is probably not as good as what you gain with your zone replacement effect.
Okay. I guess this kind of leads into the next discussion point that I was going to bring up. Obviously, people wanted to talk about lists, kind of thoughts that go into this. But a discussion that people want to talk about, like meta. They want to talk about like something you said earlier with the Cav, the Drogo list that I wanted to pick up on, and it plays into a discussion point that kind of Lockerbie was bringing up again in the general Discord on stats. Is the dawn of the new cavalry meta, or cavalry just a thing that supports more actions equals more win meta, which currently appears to be the case. That discussion there, but also the Drogo discussion, and I think cavalry to some extent give us this answer to the discussion point I was going to discuss as well. That you said Drogo is designed to win the fight, and you don't play game modes.
Yeah.
Do you think that Drogo's strength ultimately in the game right now, and where Drogo currently lies, and to some extent in 2021 before season 1 came out, do you think his strength ultimately relies on this fact that game modes in general are slightly slower paced in scoring, allowing these I'ma fight him styles?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. Cavalry in general, as a rule, like literally as a rule, and as a unit type, I think are effectively undercosted.
Okay.
I think that's always been true of flayed men since 2021. They overshadowed all the lance cavalry, but the lance cavalry have been brought up, and even champions of the stag have been brought up. People do like them. I'm getting there on them. Maybe they are actually good. Like they do have a very solid profile. Don't like the fact that they move. But
Yeah.
they obviously have to have a drawback because they are incredibly strong. A 7-5 profile with all sorts of rules now. I just think they gave them sort of like the wrong rule. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
They all got brought up to that level, which is I thought that flayed men were probably too strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cavalry maneuver is incredibly important if you know how to control distancing. And also, it's incredibly important if you're playing a person who uses positioning to block charges, uses positioning to like be out of line of sight and stuff like that. Because the cavalry maneuver just gets around all of that, right? Like it's just like I'm not in the position where I want to be when I start my activation, so I'm just going to start my activation 5 inches further over somewhere. Now I'm in your flank. Now I can see something. Now I can charge something I couldn't previously charge.
Hmm.
overall, I think that the cost that they give to that is just low. Like it just is low across the whole game, particularly since they made all except the brigands made all light cavalry 6 points. Right?
Rip brigands.
They brought light cavalry also into the fold, where like the cavalry maneuver is just really really undercosted. I think that if were to separate out how much everybody's paid for like every individual stat and what the baseline things were, you'd find that like cavalry as a rule is just not being charged very highly.
Yeah.
Um, and when we see that, and the fact that they previously had a big downside, which was they are not good at contesting or holding objectives because they only have 2 ranks.
Hmm.
But when I tell you that, in my opinion, holding and controlling ranks is now just way, way less important. Like it's just, I think
I,
that other people will say like, "What's the difference? It's only 1 point around." Like almost nothing's changed. Like I think that it's a monumental shift in the mentality towards the game. It's it's a whole extra round of fighting that will always happen effectively in my mind. That really does, like you can tell me that you think that it's in a really nice balanced place, but for me as a competitive player, I have flipped entirely from believing that the best strategy is controlling objectives. Now I personally believe that the best strategy is going out to kill my opponent.
yes.
Right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I am a competitive player. I never, like I don't I don't think that I don't think that there are any negative connotations about that. I look for what I think is currently the best strategy in the game, and then I try and implement it as well as I can. Right now, I believe the best strategy in the game is to go out there and kill my opponent. So I create lists and I play in a style that is designed to do that because I believe it's the best strategy.
Yep.
When I believed the best strategy was controlling objectives, I built lists and I played a game style that went out to control the objectives. And I think that the lean towards damage being important and controlling objectives not being important has again increased the value of cavalry, increased their role, increase the amount that you should rely on them, and that you can just go out there and it doesn't matter if you don't contest that objective because in a round or two later you will just kill the unit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's that is, yeah, very good point. And actually, it's one of the biggest comments that I've currently myself, we talk about free folk, got a major issue with. You've seen the way I've designed my lists, Carlo. We talked about it Friday, like the it's almost negative way that the current Mance list that I run plays is very
Mm-hmm.
negative. And that's because I believe that the free folk walking around and killing things, one-shotting things, has actually disappeared with the disappearance of spearwives. We don't have the option of mag and chariots currently in the UK, which does twist that as well, because those are two big, very important things within free folk, which play into that
Mm-hmm.
style. But I mean,
Yeah.
100%. I talked about my style list, and I'm not going to go into it now. But my second list for free folk is going to be Tormund, and it's going to be Tormund. You've seen it. It's a Tormund list that goes right. I'm going to run mag. I'm going to run some other stuff, and I'm just going to come and fucking kill you. And I have no
Yeah.
intention
I'm
to
gonna
play
counter
objectives.
charge. I'm gonna auto 6 charge. I'm
Yeah,
gonna and you're probably gonna throw everything you can at mag, doing as much as
yeah,
possible.
yeah. I'm just going
Um,
to absolutely and Tormund is going to be in a unit that can charge into you if he gets the counter charge off and go, ha, lol. Now I can activate and do a bunch of auto hits as well. Get fucked. Um, you know, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? It is what it is. Um,
yeah, like that's the thing. Like
yeah,
people in a way, like for a time when I first came onto TTS, like I may not have been like, I mean, I would say that like Larks is probably like literally the poster boy, but you know what I mean. I was up there as like a few people where it was like these people just score objectives and don't play the game, right? And I would just put my hands up and say, yeah, like it's the best way to play. That doesn't mean like I am a counter player, right? But that doesn't mean that I wanted the game to be objective scoring. Like I want there to be definitely want there to be an element of fighting and stuff like that. I enjoy the game. You know what I mean? I enjoyed that style of gameplay. I enjoy fighting as well. People seem to have this idea. Also, here's a great example, right? Like people think that like I'm some die-hard 3 NCU player. No, I'm die-hard that I believe 3 NCUs is the best way to play right now because of the rules and because of the costing. The moment it becomes beneficial to me to play 2 NCUs, I will play 2 NCUs.
Yeah.
This isn't some hill I'm trying to prove or die on. This is just what I think is best. I just do whatever I think is best to win the game. And then obviously like I want to play well and I want to play other people who are playing other really good lists, but like I'm not going to handicap myself coming into a game by playing what I personally consider suboptimal lists. I still think that activation advantage is a very, very powerful way to play the game. Less powerful than it was.
Mhm.
I do believe that it used to be way, 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 way only way that you could play the game.
Mhm.
I do think that there are more viable 7 activation lists and maybe crazy 6s, which are incredibly sustain based, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what they need to be. They need to have like tons of
Well, it's the champ.
rally cry
It's
and
like the
stuff like
double
that.
champ, double rally
Yeah,
cry,
double champ is a stag
Eldon
with
or
rally cry.
Loris
So
or
every
something.
time you attack, you're
Yeah.
healing. Every time you do something, you heal. Every time, you know, and effectively, you just hope and pray that your opponent can't get through one of them. If they do get through one of them, the whole thing's going to fall apart, right?
Yeah.
If you present enough that your opponent can't get through one, then you might actually do well. But like I say, like this isn't. I don't have any strong feelings about the way the game should be played, or like that this is a tactic that is fun and this is a tactic that is not fun. There are lists which can be a ball ache to play against, and I do include Insignificant in that because like because it can be really really difficult to just like find routes to winning the game when your opponent doesn't give up victory points. But
Well, yeah. Something I
you
was going
know,
to touch on as well, but yeah.
exactly. And if your opponent just won't give up victory points, then how do you win?
Yep.
Other than tabling, and if your opponent also has the opportunity to put more units back on the table, then realistically you're not going to table them. And I don't think that the fighting style is a negative. I just think that it's where we are right now. I don't think that's a positive either. I still think that both require the same level of skill. Um, I think that the fighting has more variance in it, as
Mhm.
in you are less definitely going to win because you're the better player, right? Like there is more risk involved in going out and trying to fight somebody. You can get disorderly charges. You can have things that 90% of the time should like wipe somebody out, and then you just get the corner case where they don't die. And when you compare that to a style of play, which is like if I control this point, this point, and this point, if I do movement in certain orders, if I block certain things, they're all like 100% guarantees that they will happen the way you think they will happen. The fighting, the rolling of the dice, that's where the luck comes into it. And so fighting basically is less consistent at determining who the better player is.
Mhm.
But maybe you could argue in counter to that, if you want to win consistently with a fighting game style, that means that you are significantly better than everybody that you play because you can do it repeatedly, reliably, always winning, even though you are also at the whims of luck.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a different skill in my opinion. You're still
It
setting up
is.
these moments. Like people, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say that there wasn't issues with it, but people said I always get one-shotted by people using spearwives and doing these things, and it's like, yeah, but like if you're always getting one-shotted, either the unit's doing like ridiculous number of hits and wounds every time it attacks and it's just OP, or maybe people are setting up for it And it's like, oh, hang on, have you ever been charged by this thing and it's done like basically nothing? And they go, yeah. We go, so then actually it's not as simple as just do this, do this, do this. There is an element of setup. There's an element of positioning or something that's gone into that, and that could be anything. It could be a flayed men charge with Drogo, spearwise with old free folk. Although I do admit that was a very high damage output with the right setup. Um, it uses Starks with the old Stark, as much as it was frustrating. Stark Zerkers coming in and going, right, I'm going to uppercut you. We all knew it was going to happen, but actually, like, it wasn't just something you could just do. People didn't pick up
Yeah.
Starks, do that, and win games. They had to actually go, right, hang on, how do I set this uppercut up? So yeah.
I think that like there can be a question, like there can be a fundamental question of whether or not a unit should be able to one shot. I mean, the literal one shot, not the Michael
Yes.
Chanel troll one shot of by one shot we mean leave an opponent like not powerful enough to attack back or like not I mean
One
literally
wound,
12
one or
wounds.
2 wounds.
I'm talking 12 wounds in an
Yep.
attack. There is a fundamental principle question that you could ask whether or not any unit should be able to do it with like any situation.
Yep. Any card
And
play,
if
anything
you
else.
believe fundamentally a unit shouldn't be able to do it, then you have to have the maximum number of dice that anybody can ever attack with be like about 7. Otherwise, you're not allowed to have any panic modifiers for amount of damage, right?
Yep.
If you want panic, almost like the existence of panic increasing damage means that the amount of dice that anybody's allowed to roll goes down incredibly if you want one shots to not exist.
Yeah,
That there are significant ways to get 10 attacks, to get extra wounds, to get crit blow. Crit blow pretty much has to not exist if you don't want people to be one shot. And you basically have to remove all panic damage increases. Otherwise, you're going to give everybody an attack profile that is about 4 dice.
like,
Right? Like,
you could do something really stupid, like if you got rid of some of the like +3 wounds on panics and stuff like that. You could have like profiles like Free Foot Raiders, which are like 654. That's there might be the odd unit or the odd faction that's allowed 7s. That doesn't have double down elsewhere.
in principle,
Yeah.
we pretty much have to accept that one shots can exist. Right. So then what we're considering is how reliably can a certain unit one shot other things.
Mhm.
And then we're discussing how powerful is the thing that is doing the one shotting versus the thing that's being one shot. Like, are we all okay with an 8-point unit one shotting a 4-point unit? What if it's an 8-point unit one shotting a 6-point unit? What if it's an 8-point unit one shotting an 8-point unit? These are all semi different things. And then you have to ask yourself, well, did the 8-point unit actually have any defensive abilities that made it any less likely to be one shot than the 4-point unit? Kind of a question in itself. But it's how reliably are they doing it? And more importantly, was there anything you could have done about it? Could you have removed the tokens before they attacked you? Could you have not given up your flank? Could you have removed some kind of setup that they made? Could you have blocked the tactics card in some kind of way? Now, if the answer comes down to this unit can almost always, we'll call that maybe like half the time, one shot an opponent and they couldn't do anything about it, and it was a powerful unit, then yes, personally, I'm into the category of, well, yeah, that's unfun. Like, it's
Yeah.
unfun if your opponent like just loses one of their units, didn't get like there was literally nothing they could do about it. Like a genuinely really good player still couldn't stop that. Like nothing they could do, and it can be infuriating for people who maybe aren't at that level and they don't understand what they could have done to stop themselves being one shot. They just see themselves dying again and again and again and think, well, this is unstoppable. But I don't think that it's happening. Like personally, I don't think it exists in the game. Even at flayed men at 8 points, even Drogo flayed men, I don't think they're just reliably killing stuff. But I do think that it's on a balance. I wonder there was this big thing we talked about ourselves. We both kind of like lost our minds a little bit about this idea of Tully Cavaliers with Great John. The fact that this feels like it should just be able to one shot things without your opponent having any interaction with it, right? Like we're
Yeah.
talking about 10 dice on the charge. Can't weaken this unit because Caitlin will remove it. You can't, unless you've got some kind of card blocking mentality, card blocking abilities, you can't stop me from using Great John's, take 4 more wounds. I can even throw in things like Devastating Impact to grab, 2 tokens onto the charge. And yet, well, like it's not yet shown itself to be dominant. It's nobody's wiping everybody out with this Tully Cavalier list, which I personally thought was going to be a real problem. So who knows? Like I if that's not the thing, that's the big bad one shotter, then I really don't think a big bad one shotter even exists.
I think this is going to sound mental, but I think you're quite literally 1 point short of the perfect list.
You're talking about 9 activations?
So, we are going for, we are going for Great John in a 5-point unit because there are no 4-point units. House Bolt
Yeah.
Flayed Men for the one shot. Tully Cavaliers have got the opportunity, but the crit blow and the double down on the panic, I think, might be better. You can replace with Tully Cavaliers. It's an 8-point cavalry unit. You will eventually land on which one ends up being better. Mercs with Rickon Osher, Merc with Bran, and the 2 dogs, Summer and Shaggy, is 41 points.
Shot.
It's if there's a 4-point infantry unit for Starks that gets released, then I think Starks literally overnight become the best faction.
But I mean, I think that the 8 activation variant is still very, very strong.
Yes,
I think you can turn both of those Stormcrow Mercs into Starks One Swords, and they become very viable fighting units. You can drop Bran and Hodor because you're not actually picking up.
What it's worth though. Bran and Hodor, I was looking at the graphs and stuff that we're working on. Bran and Hodor is one of the better attachments in Starks at the moment. By win rate.
He has lost a whole point, right, and lost nothing off of the back of it.
Yeah, so do look at Bran. I do think there's space for looking at Bran and Summer. He does do well. Pick up. We'll put up a Mormont vet for now. Safe play.
But I think that this is the bones of a very strong list, and something that I was thinking about myself. Like starting to explore new list ideas now that I've moved on from Targaryens, and maybe looking at Starks in the future.
Got to do the.
But yeah, I just wondered how powerful it is. No, I have. Yeah, I have actually. I have started on my Greyjoys. Got them out the box. Nice. Opened the box of the next army and started filing away a few mod lines and get them ready to base coat them. So they'll be coming coming to a profile near you. I'm sure I'll pick up some nice losses in learning the faction over the next few weeks.
Nice. More juicy ELO for me. Anyway, there's discussion on meta for people interested. And it actually does lead quite nicely into this, which is a tournament that happened in Spain. We're nearly there, guys. Nearly going to finish off. Spain happened. It's happened in Madrid. It was a 24-player event in the end. And it was won by Vitasia. And it was undefeated, only undefeated player. The only clearly and a much better free float player than myself. It does kind of make me sad that over the 4 rounds that he played in his event, he actually had less, I think, UDs. Yeah, he had 10 less UDs than I did. And if you look at his lists, I want this one. It's Raiders.
Wow, yeah, I hadn't actually looked at the list.
And his second list is Raiders, and he takes Mag.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Interesting that he's gone full Insig
It
Raider
is
spam.
exactly what we saw winning against the Night's Watch before in the awful kind of lists. You just
Yeah.
take 7. I mean, this is only 6, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, it's only the 6 because he takes Walrus Clan Chieftains and Tormund as his 3 flex, and Styre, which is the damage flex that you take.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this list is absolutely fine. Like, I have no. This is a good list, right? I have no qualms about this list because it sticks to the basic principles that works for free folk. But
Yeah.
I
Well,
have a problem with this. I'm not gonna lie. This is a fucking problem, in my opinion.
yeah, I think we are back. Personally, I think that we are back to Insignificant being a problem since the game mode change. I think that
Yeah.
again, you can say that I'm overreacting to such a small, subtle change, but I think that it is very much a very knife edge balance, which is that I believe that we have moved to a situation where denial of victory points through Insignificant, while your opponent can't score that many points from the game mode anymore, is in the problematic region, right? Like, I do think that I think it's problematic, not because I think that this list is unbeatable, but because I don't think it's good for the game that what he's done is deployed 7 raiders.
6, well, 6, but yeah, yeah.
It's six raiders, sorry. I mean, hey, he's going to Endless Horde. We might as well call them 8 raiders.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
You can't Endless Horde anything else. And, like, so, yeah, like, guys, he's going to deploy 8 raiders over the game. Free Folk have so many units in their entire roster, and he's ignoring them in favor of this one unit. And the only thing this one unit brings is a one rule called Insignificant. We have to then say maybe Insignificant is an issue. And particularly when spammed in that way, it's spammed such that now your opponent, outside of Clash of Kings, your opponent literally can't score victory points from killing you. And so if you can control more objectives than him and can not get tabled, which is very, very unlikely, you will win. Flat out.
Yeah.
You don't have to kill anything yourself. All you have to do is go out there and control the objectives. And I think it's interesting that he runs what I think is pretty trash tier attachment myself, or as Clan Chieftain. But if you go out there and your only goal is to sit on and control an objective, all costs, then yeah, that's going to work for you. That overpriced objective is going to be worth 2 points.
I mean, I'm in absolute agreement. Unfortunately,
again, just to point out, guys, I don't have a single problem with him and his lists.
No.
Which is,
No.
like he has looked at the game and he has said, I think this is the best way for me to win.
Yeah.
And then he goes and plays it, and I'm like, fair play, absolutely. Yeah. I have a problem with Insignificant as a rule existing in the game, or at least its implementation. That similar to the way that like Poor Fellows were bringing too much for 4 points. There isn't a big enough downside to what Raiders bring, considering they're the unit they're bringing.
This is actually, so this is again a fundamental thing that I realized in the event at the weekend as well. You've noticed in my list, Carlo, I've moved away from Raiders at 4 points. Typically, I run 2 in my lists. Yeah. Now that's it. And that is a conscious choice because I'm trying to not use them as often. I'm not relying on them as much. I'm not going to completely kill myself. Tormund in Free Throat Raiders is one of the best 5-point units in the fucking game. I'm not going to not do that. But actually, I fundamentally believe at this point that Raiders don't need Insignificant. The problem here, though, is another issue. And that is this list works infinitely less well the moment you move Mance from the equation. The moment you remove Mance from this equation, you can beat this list actually probably all right.
Because it's realistic at that point that you could table it.
Yeah.
Or realistic that you can get onto the objectives fast enough, or at least force them off of the objectives fast enough that you can score. but the morale bubble says that most people don't have enough raw dice to get through you. So
And
yeah,
the
I agree with
control.
that.
Like this is actually like it's the double-edged problem, and this is where free folk and any good free folk player, myself, Weasel, always talk about this issue. You can't remove free folk from the faction because it just makes Mance better comparatively. You can't nerf Mance completely because actually there isn't much else outside of these very aggressive, maybe Tormund, or I think personally I like Steer quite a lot at the moment. And those lists just suffer real fucking hard into certain tech. Like Barristan comes out, someone knows how to use Barry in a Steer list. Steer's got jack shit. Um,
You say you can't, but like
go on.
you can, guys. You can just get rid of Mance.
Yeah.
Free folk could be shit. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the thing, right? You could make them shit, and that's an option, right? You can do that.
But the real problem is that there are some people who do just want free folk to be shit. Like
Yes.
they don't want the Horde faction to succeed. People want to play and feel like elite armies are not just viable but the best strategy. Again, like I don't have a hill that I'm trying to die on. I'm not trying to force my own viewpoint onto the game. I don't care if elite armies or spam armies are the best thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whichever is the best is the one that I will play. I'll play whatever's best, I think, for the faction that I play. So, and free folk are pigeonholed into this idea that they will be a spam army or horde army or whatever spam indicates that we're just using one unit. Horde is the better idea. It is best, and they did do a good job, at least at first, before the game mode changes. That like there were a lot of moving parts. Coordination tactics was a big part of like having multiple different units and multiple different abilities out there, and moving them around and swapping them about. But the reality of the game mode change is that now we're back into this idea that Insignificant is your by far most useful, important ability. Some people in the chat are talking about some fixes to Insignificant. We actually had a discussion at our club the other week, and it's kind of come up before. Personally, I think that the perfect fix to Insignificant exists in the other rule that the unit has, which is adaptive, which is unit can either have no attachments and be insignificant, or it can utilize its adaptive rule, but when it puts attachments within the unit, you could call it named attachments, you could call it any attachment. I think any attachment is just simpler rules wise, but effectively, if you have an attachment in the unit, no longer insignificant. And the clear cut of that, it came about from like somebody who's much less of a rules player, much less of a competitive player, just like saying like, how does nobody give a shit that Tormund just died? Most units that I use are nameless nobodies, and they give up victory points when they die. This important named character in amongst the unit of raiders just died, and nobody cares. Nobody's given up victory points. And so I think that there's a perfect opportunity that is just like you can have adaptive and get a free point. You're no longer insignificant, or you give up that free attachment point and you have a 4-point insignificant unit that doesn't have an attachment unit. And yeah, I honestly think that it's a perfect fix to it. Your unit's either a point more expensive, technically not. They'll put as many units on, but you're not going to get your raid leader. You're not going to get your effect. Your unit is a point less good. Probably half a point because most of the free folk attachments are shite.
Yeah.
Or it's insignificant. You get one or the other.
I do think my only other thing really is I think Endless Horde needs a change. Like it's the dumbest card in the fucking game. Like the only card that beats Endless Horde in terms of dumb levels is Field Control, because Field Control is literally a fuck whatever you want to do. It fucks not just Endless Horde, but it also fucks completely Outflank as a rule. Like Outflank literally might as well not exist. It's so dumb. Because of Field Control, right? And Field Control is oppressively good because it's a time where you make your opponent do something when they wanted to do something else. In the same way that Taunt is, but Taunt's luck based. Obviously, Field Control isn't. My issue with Endless Horde is that it's just a joke. Like, the game me and Carlo played at the weekend, right? Carlo gave me first turn. He said, right, if he's got it in hand, he's going to play it. And we've discussed this plenty of time, me and Carlo. If I have Endless Horde in my opening hand in that game, a good chance Carlo's decision to give me first player probably just throws the game for him. Like, that is the most impactful decision he can make. He takes a risk. I don't have it. Immediately, the game is most likely he's going to win. We've played this matchup plenty of times. We know it. And that's why I wasn't that pissed off when I lost. Because actually, I was like, oh, that's the matchup. I lost it this time.
And that could quite easily be a decision that's not even in my hands. Like
Yeah.
I can 50-50 lose the choice for turn, and then Mickey's just like draws his hand. Cool, endless sword. I'll go first. All right, cool. I'll have another unit, please.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, there's if you think it's bad that your opponent can go out there and just delete one of your units without you having any input, well, it's just as bad if your opponent can just go out there and put another unit on the board without you having any input.
Yeah. Like, it's stupid.
Yeah.
But
I
this is the
hadn't
thing.
actually looked at Victor's lists, and I did not realize that they were complete Raider spam. Obviously I had looked and I knew that they were Mance.
Mhm.
I know that Munster, who came third, who also ran Mance.
Yep.
He ran Mance in the 3 games that he won, and he ran Rattleshirt in the 1 game that he lost. Man, and they are the only 2 Free Folk players in the event. They are the only 2 Mance players. So Mance went 100% win across the tournament. Free Folk go, 1 loss, and it was with Rattleshirt, showing that Free Folk, when piloted in certain ways, they're still not popular. They're still not a popular choice.
And they're
But
effectively a
they're
one
a one-trick
style.
pony.
Yeah. I mean, he runs a much more interesting Mance list, which I did have a look at earlier. I do like it. But they have access to all the other fun tools. So you've got Frozen Shore Bear Riders, a unit that I personally don't think is that good, but can do work. 1-1, who is your replacement for Tormund, who's an absolutely fine 8-point version of Tormund, but with the giant kind of like ridiculousness that he brings. Raiders with a raid leader and a Frozen Shore Chariot. All of these things are still good. It's a different way of looking at it. I think his list could probably be better, taking the Frozen Shore Bear Riders out personally. But it's still a fundamentally good 8 activation list that, hey, guess what? If he brings out Endless Horde, he's playing at 9 activations. Right?
Yeah.
Interestingly, one of the things I will say, over the whole weekend, over 4 games, how many times do you think I played Endless Horde, Carlo, across 4 games?
4 times?
Twice. Yeah? You don't need it to win as Free Folk. Like, I played it once because it was helpful in my game to get me extra
Are you
VP
counting the
where I was
one
already
that you
up.
played against me?
Hmm?
You count the one that you played
Oh,
against me?
no, I don't count the one I played against
Okay.
you, no. Because, I mean, I knew you had field control in hand. I did it because it was my only route to victory, so I technically played the card 3 times. But yeah, I mean...
You redeployed a unit twice.
Yes. Or deployed a unit fresh. Yeah, and every time I'd already done it. I never did it at the start of the game for a free unit. I'd always done it after a unit had died. Yeah, and Alex is right. Painting 6 units of raiders just doesn't sound fun. Hey, there's a reason I don't play.
Howard says, obviously, stop it with field control. Interestingly, he then says raw after it.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it is raw. I just think it's the rules. Like, as in, like, I wouldn't even preface that with raw, like it's some kind of like discussion anymore. Like, I think it's been really, really well established that field control stops Endless Horde, turns it back then into the field control effect. And obviously, Jesse says can't apply it, but like those 2 options, you got to have the card to stop it. And if you do, it can be a big play. Counterplot, not so much, because all you've done is stop the counterplot of the card. They still get the zones effect, and plot could stop many other important cards. Field control, quite different. An interaction we've discussed at length, that it is massively in the Targaryens' favor if they get it off. Those aren't options available to any other factions, though, right? Like,
Nope.
okay, I mean, we can Courtney or Danny to get counterplot, but you shouldn't be planning your entire strategy around that one card. Like, you shouldn't be bringing a whole second list for that one card, I don't think, while also knowing, I guess, that whole list is now based around facing free folks. So are we now also trying to build a list which can table them, or build a list? I think that I have always thought that free folk have a problematic design space that nobody will be happy, or the vast majority of people will not be happy as long as free folk are even in the discussion of top tier. That even in discussion of being the top 3 faction, then I think that makes a lot of people unhappy, because there are people who like have a hill that they want to die on in terms of what the game should be versus what the game's reality is. And there should be is that spam can't, or actually not spam, horde can't be competitive, because they see horde, they think spam. We don't want spam to be competitive. We don't want just raiders to be competitive, the best competitive viable strategy. But if free folk can deploy 6 units, play 9 activations, and all 6 units are different. They've got 2 raiders, they got a trappers, they've got a spearwife, they've got a followers of bone, they got a fens, right? That's 6 units. It's possibly 20. You can probably fit that in, right?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, there's
You can
3.
fit that in, and 3 NCUs.
There's three. So it's a 9 activation list, right? So 3. You
Yeah,
have 4 flex points. 3
yeah,
5-point units is fine, and you can put
yeah.
Tormund detachment
You've
in one of
even
the
got 1
raiders.
point
Done.
left. Yeah, you can even get Tormund or Harmer
Yeah,
in
you
there,
put a
right?
raid leader in the other raid unit, and
Guys,
then you put Mance in one of
how
your
does
units.
that not represent free folk as best as you possibly could thematically on the table,
Yeah,
right? And if you have a problem with that list being good, then you just have a fundamental problem with free folk being good. That's a little bit different to having a problem with 6 raiders being good.
yeah.
So like I can understand the problem there. But yeah, I think that free folk will always be a maligned faction in that way.
It's interesting because actually on the flip side, neutrals and Lannisters really are competing to be the worst in the game at the moment. Um, Starks, surprisingly, are still not making the climb, which we expect them to do. The whole
Hmm?
Stark discussion is something that we won't discuss today. Maybe save it for next time. Why Starks aren't really doing what we expect them to be able to do is a whole level of discussion that, yeah,
Don't know. I don't play them.
no. Um, but Lannisters are really where the problem lies at the moment, and it's not free folk are not causing Lannisters' demise. Free folk are not causing neutrals problems. Like these factions just aren't good. They don't have the required tools to deal with things that Lannisters. Lannisters are struggling into Baratheons, man. Like that's a sad state of affairs, isn't it?
Yeah. One says the OP Greyjoys are still in the middle. Yeah, fifth base right now, -9. Like barely negative, but they are technically there. They've not moved far from there. Times they've been third, maybe when
Push
everybody
up
was
to like
closely
plus
packed.
10, right, at some point, I think, but maybe even a bit
Yeah,
higher. But
they've been sixth, but I think that they're a really interesting faction, and I'll start playing them. You maybe get more thoughts from me about what I think of Greyjoys coming in the next few weeks. I'll be trying a few different things out, but I do think that there are, for all the toolbox that they have some very distinct list builds which I'm drawn towards, and I've seen a lot. So maybe they're not. Maybe they're not as viable as or like don't have as much viability as I think that they have in my mind. But
is it by any chance? I'm just going to throw some ideas out there. Is Baelor and Balon the blind and Wendemir and
yeah, I mean,
Silence
I
Men?
personally don't see a list without Baron in. I don't see a list without Windermere in. Third NCU. You
Baelish.
know, may decide based on what you've got going on.
Mhm.
Actually, I like the idea of just of a bot league.
Yeah,
uh,
I don't think he's trash
into at
because
least one of them. You
yeah,
know, as quite an interesting play. Um, Baylor, yeah, Baylor. Sorry, I always get Baylor and Balon and Baron. Baylor as a commander just stand out great, and that silence men combo seems to be the go-to thing, and looks really powerful. I still have, I have a soft spot for semi-troll lists, so I'm really interested in Dagmare, Victorian, you
yeah,
know, coordination tactics, extra activations, like just crazy, silly things, getting to activation counts that are just obscene, and just like having the cards come up and just have a turn which is unstoppable, while also being a good list at all other times. That's the thing. Like, I like things that give me the opportunity to make plays that my opponent just cannot stop, while
combos,
also
combo
being powerful.
lists that don't require the combo to win.
Yeah. Combo lists that are viable when the combo doesn't work or doesn't come off.
No, there's a lot to be said there.
Yeah.
Um, I do think that is interesting. So yeah, that's two of the events there that ran over the weekend. Just a massive shout out to the Spanish community, and of course to
Yeah.
Victor, who's going to be heading over to the A Song of Ice and Fire Stats Invitational happening at the LGT in September/October this year. He's going to be heading over with Mikel from Spain. Um, the only other one that I know anything about was Trash Panda Bats winning the Badger Brawl tournament. It was only a small event. There's 12 players, which is absolutely fine. But the reason I wanted to give this guy a shout out is I believe he beat Carl Kirsten, West Coast Bannerman, in the last round.
Absolutely.
Oh no, it
In
was in
his
the second
second,
round.
oh, in the second game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, in a very close 9-10, and it really came down to like the last round or something like that. And yeah. Uh, well played to Joe.
One of these days, we're going to have to talk about Fargo Ho Night's Watch and why it's succeeding.
Because like I was trying to discuss the other day with Sir Jacob of Glace, it's not about what we think, right? It's not about our opinion. It's about, okay, let's looking at it objectively. Yes, I think Vargo's shit, but then look at it and go, right, what does it enable? And actually, the moment you start looking at it and what it enables, it's some really dumb shit that you can do, and it's safe. That's the thing. The combos are safe. I won't go into it all the time, but this with basically whatever you want else is a safe combo, man. And it's a Carlo list. It works nearly all the time, and yet it doesn't even need to work for the list to be good.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I
anyway,
mean, I think it's interesting and exciting, and it's a thing that nobody saw coming, and a thing that good players started playing, and other people are picking up, and it's getting wider use, and yet just keeps working. You know,
I'm
like
gonna
it keeps
say it.
working.
Gonna say it straight for you, Carlo, in the same way that Drogo works, right? There's this little thing called hardened, and if you can get through hardened automatically, that's pretty fucking good.
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, or Masher bubbles, Mance bubbles, and shit like that. Um, so, uh, the last thing I want to mention, as requested by Thomas Natchab, he sent me a message much earlier today saying, "Hey, it would be cool if you guys could do a little shout out on the stat stream to my small TTS tournament happening in 2 weeks' time." He's organising this with the guys from Tabletop Warden.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying out a format. You're going to play the whole tournament in one weekend via TTS, which
Yeah,
happened in the US last year. I believe the US did a variant of this. Um, so if you want to play, it's open to anybody. The round timings are all up there for you to look at. It's to play a whole game, a whole series of games across a weekend, or a weekend. 4 rounds
yeah.
across the 2 days. And yeah, uh, have a little look at it if you're interested in
It,
playing another
it
TTS
it
event.
looks really good. There are 8 players signed up right now.
Yeah.
I did have a look earlier in the day. It is 8 very strong players. You know, like the average rating of these 8 players is right up there.
Mhm.
But I really think that yeah, like just like if you're on TTS and you want to put a weekend into getting, it's not going to take your whole weekend. It's not like going to a whole weekend tournament. But if you really want to put some hours in and play in a really good event, this is the one. This is the one. Go and sign up. I think that, it's a really good idea. I do think that the um, shorter time scale TS event is something that people should look more seriously at and consider more regularly. I think that the weekly structure, which we first established like 2 years ago, has its advantages, but also has its drawback. And the events can like draw on over time and drag out. I think that yeah, 4 rounds over 2 days, perfect.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, Also, shout out to some of the events. I'll go through the list as we normally do. I've got some other little things we're going to do before we finish as well. But shout out to the future tournaments we've got coming up this week. For those of you not interested, the list is huge, by the way. Look at this. There's a list of absolutely fucking tons of events. Excuse my language. But we've got an event happening in Zaragoza in Spain. Butchered that. So that is happening on Saturday. We've got an event happening in Denmark. Fantastic to see a Danish event coming up also on Saturday. Over the 2 weekend, we have got the Fabricator Forge national event qualifier. So massive shout out to the Fabricators Forge guys. They are looking to stream. They are going to stream it. If you want to see the stream, get onto Twitch. It will be our Twitch/Steel City Legion. It's also on their YouTube page. They have had they have had YouTube content on there for a while from their last event as well. So do check out the Fabricator Forge tournament there. I expect that to be pretty fun and pretty good. We've also got Honed and Ready, the tournament, not the game mode, happening on Sunday in, I'm going to say Russia. We've got another event happening in Bournville, France on Sunday as well. We've got a tournament happening on Sunday in Valencia, Spain. We have got... That is it. The next one's in Quebec County, Canada, next week, next Friday, not this week. So that's what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, and someone's running a small event. 6 events happening this weekend across all of the different places. Do check out the Fabricator Forge event. That's going to be the biggest one of the weekend, probably. It is the Nationals qualifier happening for the region. There's going to be filming. There's going to be games streamed if you're wanting to sit down, watch some painting. And there probably will be, I believe, Chris Bolton Skincare from Sunday Slaughter is also going to be filming some stuff there as well. So I really hope that goes well and we see lots of content come out from those guys. Yeah. Other things, well, it wouldn't be even the best or worst episode of Tourney Ground, Carlo, without this moment here. I know it's people's least favourite moment, but I fucking love it. And I have got some nice pictures to look at of some Rose Nights, so why in the fuck not show them off to people?
I like I like the color choicing on these. I do think that the pink really adds a nice accent. I
like it.
Yeah. Really like the black shields with the gold. I think those shields are a really really nice effect. I slightly regret the like cream and silver that I did my Rose Knights shields in. So yeah, I think that I've seen actually some people do their Rose Knights like not as Renly, like and very dark armor and no green on them. And I think that again, that black and gold color scheme was there. I think that's
yeah, definitely. I like these. I think they're nice. They're well done, obviously. And I agree. I think the slight deviation away from what is kind of like standardized in Rose Knights is pretty good. So yeah, solid 0.
Oh yeah,
solid 0. That's from Piojo. Guys, quite commonly on the Discord. I've probably butchered his name as well. And if I'm probably really going to get this wrong, right? This is really putting my eggs in the basket and knowing players and where they're from. I'm pretty sure Andy is from Argentina. Yes, I was about to say it. No, Uruguay. Shit. Argentina. Jesus. Whew, I
I
was
had no
right.
idea.
I was right.
When you said Argentina, I was like, yeah, that's right. And then you were like, Uruguay, and I was like, wait,
I
maybe it's not right.
honestly, for a moment, I'm like, hang on, Uruguay, Paraguay, they all have similar flags, right? A moment of madness there. No, I was right with Argentina. Yeah, so thanks from Piaget from Argentina there for that. Cool. Couple more things. Just answering a couple of last questions in chat. Saw camera over your game, Carlo, earlier. We're going to get that game footage sometime soon. It is up on the Dead Meta Gaming YouTube channel. I will quickly find it for you here. So I won't play the video because that's the last thing you want
Since
me to
he's
do.
up on screen, just to fill the time while Mickey finds this link, has anybody else noticed stealthily winter is coming has just been racking up the badges. He's what, free folk? He's free folk away from the eight set,
Uh-huh.
getting onto the Elite Four after that. Obviously,
Do you know?
once he's got
Do you know he
once
said
he's got eight
he's not
badges.
gonna do the neutrals, right? He's not gonna do the neutral
No,
commanders.
no, he says he's not going for the neutral badge on them, which is fair enough. Yeah, like,
Yeah. Is
um,
that Tom No Cups, by the way? It is, isn't it? It's Tom
was
No
that
Cups.
Tommy, little Tommy No Cups? Maybe he'll have to become that, but
Sorry,
makes Mickey look like he's not the only No Cups in the
I'm
top
not
eight.
alone. That's all that matters. Yeah. So the video for those interested is up on Dead Meta Gaming on YouTube. Go give them a like, give them a subscribe. They've got the whole 8.5 hour stream on there of games. Are we gonna do a recap of it necessarily, Carlo? Is it something you're interested to kind of like do anything over the top, or do you think the Dead Meta guys? Is there any kind of moments you wanted to do anything for or discuss?
No, not really. I mean, not in the short term. I haven't.
Mhm.
It was 4 games in a day. I can't remember them all distinctly. I don't. Honestly, interestingly, I don't necessarily think that was always my very best play. Like I say, I'm not aggressive play styles, not normally my thing, and I really took a few risks, which maybe I shouldn't have at times. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily analyze it as the best plays that I've ever made, but I think that's a large reality of tournaments. Like, I think that you hold people to how they play on the day, not on not on the best game that you've ever played. And by the time you get to the fourth game of a tournament, by the time you get to the final, you really have to hope that you can hold it together. And it's a reality that it's not easy to do. So I was really, really pleased, to win the tournament. I'll not lie. Like, I felt I haven't been playing my best recently. And I've been distracted by other things, not putting all my time into Song. And it was nice to have a tournament, really focus on the game and focus on my lists, and then do well and perform well on the day.
Mm.
Well enough at least.
Yeah.
Perfection's what we strive for, but like getting the win is what you have to be happy with and accept. And there was good games, great opponents, great lists. Small event, but I was really, really pleased. Kind of get back to not losing Mickey specifically, but just
Hey.
doing well. And really, and honestly, I enjoyed the game because of it. I enjoyed that I put in some effort. I spent some time studying my opponent's lists before the tournament, and I think that was very useful. I almost knew flat out that I would be playing Mickey at some point. I really predicted it, and so I'd spent significant amount of time the night before thinking about how I can win that matchup, what my best list matchup is, and how I can play differently, because we'd played the game on Friday and I had been absolutely fucking crushed. And so I knew that I needed a new strategy, and implemented a few things a bit differently, and it went much better.
I will
And
say
it was just
on that exact topic as well before we kind of close off and everything. There, I wanted to face you earlier in the event. I wanted to knock you out of the event much earlier than the last round because I looked at the game modes, and Clash of Kings was about the only game mode where I knew I had zero advantage from a game mode perspective going into it. And we got
Mhm.
Clash of Kings in the last round, and it was like, oh shit,
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
gonna be
couldn't
fun.
have been a better mode for me. I think
Yeah.
that it's almost impossible win in some of the other modes.
Yep.
But yeah, so it was really really good to play against some new lists. I had to look at them and try and understand them and think about that matchup. And going through that whole process taught me a lot about, like I say, sort of taught me about the Grey Worm list, and that in reality, once it came to the lists that I saw at the tournament, I never quite saw myself running Grey Worm, and so that was a weakness of the pairing in the end. But Drogo had a good enough matchup into all the rest that he managed to pull it off. Yes, just overall, I was really pleased to get back to playing well, and I felt that it's the first time I've played well since like season 1 has come around. And time to good to move on to a new faction and try some new stuff out, and good to be back on spot.
Yeah, of course. Thought you'd say that. Last thing then, very last thing, literally the last thing. I was going to read out a couple of comments we got from the surveys. Appreciate those. You don't need to do the surveys now, guys. I've got the stuff we need and the general direction. And that doesn't mean I don't want to hear anyone's opinion. And feel free to drop me a message if there's any feedback or anything like that. But purely, like, the stats are overwhelmingly pointing in one direction. So unless we collected them forever, then there'll be no point. Plus, turns out that if you want to access more than 10 records on SurveyMonkey at any one time, you need to pay for it. And it's bloody expensive. So I had to go through and analyze them one at a time until I hit the delete limit. There's a thing. There's a delete limit on survey responses. And because you can only see the first 10, you have to delete them as you see them to see the next one in line. And when you hit the delete limit, you can't see past that 10 that you've got. So there's like 2 or 3 survey answers
Google?
that I literally can't see. I know, I'll just use Google next time. Honestly, I used SurveyMonkey because it was there and I was like, fuck it, I wanted to put it together quickly. 100% next time I'm using Google. So anyway, yes. One of the comments, 4 hours is a turn off right away. Try and keep it to an hour max 2. Sorry. That was from a guy who doesn't even watch the show apparently. So great.
Wow, I guess maybe he tuned in just this week to find out if we were going to stick to an hour.
I hope he did. Someone wanted answers for questions in chat. Hopefully we've been better today with that. And we do try to do that. Someone said they wanted to hear Carlo's thoughts on Mickey's thoughts. Great.
I think I normally give them. Yeah. Normally what I say. That's a pile of shit.
And another favourite of mine, to watch the hosts bicker over mostly trying to say the same thing. Yes. But yeah, no, overwhelmingly people wanting to look at lists and from events and discussion of meta discussion and things like this. So we'll try and do that a lot more in the kind of content that we create, and certainly to Underground is where I'm going to go. We are going to play it by ear a little bit with what this kind of does its work and does its job for as things move over the next kind of couple of weeks. I am thinking, yes, probably next week there will not be an episode. God forbid there will not be an episode of Tourney Ground next week. I'm sorry. Is the only thing I have to say to that. It's the Easter weekend, and I ain't gonna lie, me and Carlo were going somewhere on Sunday, and the last time I went to this said event on a Sunday, I got horrifically drunk. So
am I?
Yeah, it's this Sunday, the 17th.
Oh, right, cool, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know, sorry.
Yeah, no, the last time I went to this
like,
event...
where the fuck am I going on Sunday?
Yeah, the last time we went to this event on Sunday, I got really fucking drunk.
Yeah, I didn't get drunk, but I did come back. I could barely stand for about a week. I hurt my back.
Yeah, you don't want to know. Anyway,
yeah, it was messy. There were police. There was everything. Yeah, okay.
Oh, don't we just love it? Anyway, so yeah, there probably won't be an episode next week, guys. And that's no promise. There might be. I might decide to do one anyway. But I'm just letting you guys know now, so don't necessarily think of anything. And it also gives me a chance to change some things up. Lockerbree's favourite thing in the world is going to be hopefully sorted, so we'll sort that out. And yeah, anyway, I really hope that you all have a great Easter weekend. I really hope that you all have a great, potentially 2 weeks as well. And yeah, we'll see what after Easter brings us. Yeah, hope you have a great time. All the best luck in any event games you're playing. And
sign up for War for the Wall 3.
Sign up for War for the Wall 3.
Come to Durham.
Yeah, come up to Durham. What was the last thing I was going to say? I was going to say something else. It's not that fucking important. Oh well. Maybe we'll have some new guests on. Maybe we'll scrap Carlo for a while. He does kind of suck. Anyway, take it easy, guys. Have a good one.
Ready, aim, release! Anyone see my mammoth?